The kingdom of Sil-Alari was one of the three kingdoms in Ar ruled by the elves. As one would expect from a kingdom ruled by elves, elves were the majority of the population, followed by half-elves, orcs, and a tiny number of humans. The kingdom itself was vast, almost double the size of Kingdom Thera, which was ruled by a human king. Bordered between rich forests to the north, a wide river to the south, a mountain to the east, and a huge lake to the west, Sil-Alari's main source of income was fishing, trading natural resources, and mining gold from many gold mines scattered across the kingdom. Many coveted the gold mines over the past decades. Still, none succeeded in taking the mines from the elven royal family of Sil-Alari. In addition to the gold mines, many rare ore mines scattered across the kingdom, such as Stantine, Kronor, and Lagreen. Stantine was primarily used in building lightweight airships. For example, the airship of Tenulia Valrin was built with Stantine as well as the Hunter Guardian armors. The metal had an affinity for runes like none other. Hence, placing runes on the metal was much easier than on other metals. Sil-Alari had perfect tropical paradise weather, contributing to the kingdom's beauty. The kingdom was one of the prettiest kingdoms in the whole world with elegance. Small, hidden ponds, gorgeous flower fields, and small, playful waterfalls were just a sliver of the majesty Sil-Alari has to offer. Normally, a kingdom like Sil-Alari would be cherished by foreigners and tourists. However, Sil-Alari had the lowest tourist visit because of the elves' cold nature towards foreigners. The Alarians felt foreigners would hurt their kingdom's prestige and attractiveness. As a result, Sil-Alari had unbending laws and law enforcement. Any crime committed inside the border by whether an Alarian or a foreigner, mostly they would be thrown into a mountain prison or killed on the spot by beheading. Sil-Alari's crime rate was almost 1% due to its strict laws and punishments. This was also reflected in the kingdom's flag, which had 3 vertical stripes and a circle in dark pink and bronze. Their coat of arms was animal teeth on a hexagon, symbolizing their ruthlessness. Sil-Alari had 3 cities, each ruled by an elven duke. Michael's destination, the Aqua Palace, was built in the city of Alan-Alari, named after an ancestor of King Lycler-Alari. Alan-Alari was a military city with barracks and a military shipyard. The entire city was surrounded by thick walls. The ruler of Alan-Alari, Duke Aelaz-Alari, King Lycler-Alari's cousin, resided in the most fortified forts in the entire kingdom, which could be seen from anywhere in the city. The elves and dwarves built the castle atop a mountain with a beautiful ocean backdrop behind them. Michael, Gaia, and Eve stepped into a dimly lit room where they noticed 2 guards sleeping peacefully. The 2 guards wore pale red robes, symbolizing their roots in House Rockguard. With a flick of her wrist, Gaia took out a dagger to cut their throats in their sleep. However, Michael stopped her. Let them be. Michael opened the window slowly to jump outside instead of killing them. The trio landed between 2 buildings built with gray brick stones. The sun was still on the horizon, slowly rising to light the dark alleyways. Michael quickly removed his mask and put on his usual black robes before walking out of the dark alley and stepping onto the street. Considering it was still early in the morning, the streets weren't as crowded as one would expect. Rather, only the early birds walked out of their homes to start their days. Most of them were elves. The air itself smelled rich and sweet, just like the elves. Visit. For the best-known in the experience. This way? Eve and Gaia said at the same time and looked at each other, smiling. You lead the way, Eve told Gaia before taking out a healing potion. You'll be all right. We are close to the cure. Michael patted Eve on the back as Gaia walked forward, leading them to the Aqua Palace. The elves on the streets threw a cold glance at the trio, showing their irritation towards humans and foreigners. Fucking elves? Gaia suppressed her anger and cursed them in a low-pitched voice. She rarely muffled her voice, yet even Gaia didn't dare to offend the elves, knowing the rules and punishments. The streets were brightly lit with blue street lamps. Many were put out since the sun has risen on the horizon. How far is it? Michael asked, walking on the street straight as an arrow. While following Gaia, Michael noticed the castle atop the mountain in the distance. Looking at the castle, he couldn't help imagining a castle of his own. But, At the moment, he just sighed and followed Michael without noticing Eve's gaze on him. Michael had a hard time believing Gaia when she said there was no poor in Ar until he noticed the elegant buildings on either side of the street. He had seen at least 50 elves, and none of them looked slightly poor. Instead, they looked like the nobles in Elon, even the elf carrying a bucket full of bread. He just walked behind Gaia, observing his surroundings and breathing the rich, sweet air. To be honest, it felt like he had stepped into another world. The palace screamed fantasy and grandeur with all the marble buildings, elves, and glowing runes on the walls. Moreover, the concentration of arch energy was so thick that he almost wished he could cultivate like others. After we deal with everything, we should stay here for some time and cultivate, Michael said to Gaia. You know, if you want to cultivate, you should rent the Aqua Garden. Eve informed them as she used to cultivate in the Aqua Garden. As the name suggested, it was a gigantic garden with a high concentration of arch and celestial energy. There were several private cabins built in the garden for cultivation. One could rent these cabins according to their preference and cultivate if they had wealth. Of course, the cabins were categorized into several categories such as lotus, lily, jasmine, and green leaf. The lotus cabin was the costliest, while the green leaf was the cheapest. But the cheapest green leaf cabin would cost 40,000 gold coins for 2 days. Although Michael didn't need any energy-concentrated places like others, he wanted to give Gaia the best place to get stronger. With his 40% boost from the system, Gaia could break through to the soul refining stage in a few weeks if she stayed here. Oh right, Gaia dragged her words. Visit. For a better user experience unlike Eve, Michael felt something was amiss. But he couldn't ask her in front of Eve. So Michael just pretended not to notice anything and followed her behind in silence. Almost 15 minutes later, they turned left in the street and reached the pier, where Michael noticed several boats of various sizes docked. The ocean breeze swept across his face as the sight of the rising sun on the horizon captivated his mind. Then, for a few moments, he just leaned against the railings and watched the sunrise and the majestic lotus-shaped glass building on a tiny island. The glass building was a peak of architectural beauty and mastery. The golden sun rays illuminated the building and made it look like a giant lotus floating on the ocean. Sorry to disturb your sightseeing, but we are in a rush. Gaia flicked his ears, snapping him back to reality. I'll go rent a boat. Gaia turned around and went to the line of boats adjacent to the long wooden pier. While Gaia was hiring a boat, Eve joined Michael in sightseeing. It was more like resting her body than sightseeing. She wanted to lean against the rail to regain some strength. How are you doing? Michael asked. Better than the most, I guess. Eve took a deep breath. Michael could see the dark circles under her eyes and the paleness of her skin. Her condition was worsening by the minute. If it wasn't for the healing potion, she would have lost consciousness. It's gonna be all right. We go to the Aqua Palace, buy everything I need to brew the cure and cure everyone. Easy as that, Michael smiled. How can you be so sure? Because I have the formula and knowledge. I'm not bragging, but I am better than all your heavenly alchemists. It's only a matter of time before I get to the 6-star level. I know it's hard to believe until you see the cure in action, but have some faith. Why do you think I'm here? I have faith in you, Ghost, even though we barely know each other. We went through life or death battles, Eve. Visit. For a better user experience, not sure about the second one. That was an outright massacre. You will be a god walking among mortals with the potion of yours. You killed fusion stage cultivators like they were nothing. Be careful, Ghost. Many would literally kill you to have a power like that. Want you and Voldegards protect me? Michael grinned again as Eve sighed. In case you haven't noticed, Voldegards are in need of protection. However, I will do my best to help you however I can. We still have some connections in Ysirius. Michael really appreciated Eve. Even when they were down, she agreed to help him. People like them would be hard to find. Besides, Voldegards reminded Michael of the Sunrise sect. When he first met Claire and the elders in the Heaven's Gate competition, they were the weakest sect on the continent. But nowadays, the Sunrise sect was on its way to rivaling the 3 big sects themselves. so it was only a matter of time before Voldegards regained their former glory with the help of Michael. At first, it would look like Michael helping them, but in the future, they would be one of his strongest allies in R. When we have the cure in our hands, we can play gods in your kingdom, Eve. You really are something? Eve chuckled after hearing his words. For now, she just wanted to cure her family more than anything. Let's go. Finally, Gaia finished negotiating and came to their side. Eve emptied another healing potion before following Gaia behind to a rowboat big enough to hold 4 people, including the skipper, who was a brawny human. "Welcome aboard," the man said in a thick voice and expressionless face when Gaia slowly stepped into the boat. Next, she helped Eve get on board, and lastly, Michael. Next stop, the Aqua Palace. Gaia rubbed her palms together, showing her excitement. In a few days, they would earn millions by selling the cure throughout Thera. Visit for a better user experience. Michael uttered no word while they were on their way to Aqua Island. They only had to stop once before reaching the island to pay the entry fee. For a moment, Michael was speechless when a guard adorning in aqua blue robes asked them to pay 10,000 gold coins as an entry fee. One could buy a healing potion for 9,000 gold coins in Elon. Calculating how many gold coins the Aqua Palace would earn in a month alone made Michael jealous of the Aqua Palace. In reality, the Aqua Palace had a monthly income of 50 million in gold coins. In addition, they received rare artifacts, herbs, and ores as another source of income. Eventually, after 20 minutes of rowing the boat, they reached the island. "Do I have to wait here?" the man asked Gaia, but she shook her head. "No need." Gaia stepped onto the dock and helped Eve. The Aqua Palace looked more majestic closer than when Michael looked at it from the pier. Michael activated his X-ray vision to see countless glowing runes etched on each glass petal, which could easily contain 100 humans. Aqua Palace held the #1 spot for being majestic and grandeur among all the buildings Michael had seen in this world. Imagine a giant lotus made of glass and glistening in the sunlight. To Michael's surprise, there weren't many guards patrolling the premises. In fact, it was void of any guards. However, that didn't mean the Aqua Palace was vulnerable. Instead, hundreds of runes and magical arrays, including killing and illusion arrays, protected the Aqua Palace, leading to minimal use of actual guards. The Aqua Palace wanted its customers to feel at home and offered high-quality customer service. They believed having guards patrolling the premises would make the customers feel like they were inside a military base. Hence, they used arrays and runes instead of guards. To those who had no guide like Gaia, the Aqua Palace placed markers pointing the visitors towards the front door. It was so easy to get lost on the island without any supervision. "So, who owns the Aqua Palace?" Michael asked, following Gaia. "The Arctic Hall of the Sea Folks. This is one of the very few establishments of the Sea Folks," Gaia answered Michael. "Sea Folks, huh? We don't hear about them often, do we?" "That's because we live in Elon. In R, they are quite famous. Are you from R, Elia?" After hearing Gaia, Eve couldn't help asking. Elia seemed to know much more about R than Eve expected her to. It was quite surprising for a resident of Elon to know a lot about R unless Elia had some kind of connection with R. "She travels a lot." Michael answered Eve and asked more questions about the Aqua Palace. It was an excellent time to learn more about R and Aqua Palace since it would take at least 10 minutes of walking to reach the front door. However, the water fountains, flower beds, and butterflies made walking a soothing experience. Aqua Palace was one of the most well-maintained places in R. On one side was a bed of sunflowers, except these flowers had bright blue petals. On the other side, the red maple trees provided shade as well as carpeted the pavement with their red leaves. Visit. For a better user experience, the trees looked ancient and well-pruned. "I thought Aqua Palace was owned by the Empress." Most people think that, but they don't know that the Empress owns this island, not the Aqua Palace, Eve explained to Michael. "Isn't the Arctic Hall one of the 3 major factions of the Sea Folks?" Michael recalled everything he heard about the Sea Folks from Layla Alden. Gaia and Eve nodded. Unlike the Water God Hall and Sea Serpent Hall, Arctic Hall is split into 3 houses. House of Dathomir, House of Megaloids, and House of Halrid. Gaia yet again surprised Eve with her knowledge about the sea folks. Thank the gods they don't step onto the land. Now that I think about it, I want to see who will win the award of being the first-class bitch, elves or the sea fuckers. Gaia whispered and giggled. Well, be careful what you wish for. You might see them soon enough. Michael and Gaia immediately stopped walking. What do you mean? Asked Michael. Don't you know? House Halrid has put a base in Azair. We had to send in some construction materials before the plague. Rumor has they are joining the hunt for the Dark Lord. A cold chill ran down her spine as soon as Gaia heard Eve. She even began to sweat beneath her robes. Dealing with guardians was difficult enough, and now House Halrid had joined the hunt, which meant the Arctic Hall had come to hunt down the Dark Lord. At that moment, they learned their lives had become several times more complicated and hard. Visit. For a better user experience, however, Michael remained calm because he anticipated this. He wouldn't be surprised even if the Sky Hall itself joined the hunt. It was only a matter of time before new powers sought to destroy the Dark Lord. Nowadays, everyone seeks to find the Dark Lord. Michael smiled as he resumed walking towards the front door. Although Eve had more things to worry about than the Dark Lord, she curiously asked about the Dark Lord. What's your thoughts on the Dark Lord? If I'm right, he hunts down the nobles in Elon. After reading that the Guardians hid the vampire's existence from the world, I don't think we can trust them to apprehend the Dark Lord. They might have even known about him all this time and done nothing to stop him. Eve sighed. I think we don't have to worry about the Dark Lord, Eve. Each of us has enough problems to deal with. He is the Guardian's problem. If they couldn't stop him, there are 7 more great clans. If you ask me, don't believe everything the great 8 clans and the Guardians say. Who knows? The Dark Lord might be what this world needs. Gaia chuckled, putting the seed of doubt in Eve's mind. Suppose Ghost's secret got exposed. They would need as many allies as possible. But what Gaia didn't know was Eve stood beside the Dark Lord until she drew her last breath. Eve's death affected the future Dark Lord as much as the death of Nightmare. Their deaths put Michael on a path to building a time machine that sent Michael back in time. He sacrificed everything he built to bring back everyone he lost. The moment the Dark Lord traveled back in time, he had become the past, and the current Michael became the present. Yeah, keep an open mind, and you won't be disappointed. Michael patted Eve on the shoulder. Finally, they reached a set of white stairs leading up to a set of burnished golden doors. The doors were flanked by a towering orc standing 7 feet and carrying a spear taller than him in a uniform of silver plate armor. The orc said nothing as he opened the door for the 3 of them. Thank you, Michi nodded before entering the Aqua Palace. The Aqua Palace's inside looked just as majestic as outside. At that moment, they were standing in a spacious hall under the glass roof and a humongous-sized chandelier big enough to illuminate the entire building at night. As expected, several lounges were set up for the customers to sit and rest with rare exotic flower plants for decorations. Michael also noticed several half-elves walking around the hall serving drinks and beverages to the elves in the lounges, reading royal news. Some of the elves craned their necks to take a look at the 3 of them. After seeing they were humans, they snickered and took their gazes away. Ignoring those elves, Michael, Gaia, and Eve walked toward the marble counter at the end of the hall. Welcome to Aqua Palace. I am Zen the Vermes. How may I help you today? As expected, they were welcomed by an angelic elven beauty. However, unlike those racist elves, the girl showed no emotions but delight on her face when she greeted them with a wide grin. We are looking to buy some alchemy ingredients. Gaia took the lead as Michael walked around the place like he owned the place. Visit. For the best no-underserved experience, does my lady have a VIP card? If not, you have to buy a token for 7,000 gold coins and wait for your turn. We will provide you with drinks and beverages, on the house, of course. You're new here? Where is Velitha? Eve asked, surprising the smiling elf. Here. With a flick of her wrist, Eve took out a deep blue card with the words Voldegards engraved in golden letters under the Aqua Palace crest. A water droplet encircled by 2 sea dragons. Forgive me for not recognizing you, my lady. You must be Lady Eve Voldegard. The girl quickly bowed with the utmost respect. We are in a rush, Zenna. So I would appreciate it if you get me these items as quickly as possible. Of course. Myriad. Zenna clapped as another elven girl dressed in emerald green robes walked out of the door behind Zenna. Take my Lady Eve Voldegard to Master Aloba. Zenna instructed Myriad and turned her gaze back to Gaia and Eve. Master Aloba is our head of the alchemy section, and he will be glad to help you. With a wave of her hand, Zenna made the marble counter slide open for Myriad. Afterward, the elf began to lead them to Master Aloba. Looking at Eve and Gaia following an elf behind, Michael stopped gawking around and followed them behind. The elf led them to the glass stairs to the second floor, which contained several stairs leading to various branches in the building, but they didn't take any stairs. Instead, they followed the elf to a jade stone door. Master Aloba is inside, my lady, my lord, the elf said in a melodious voice as Gaia pushed open the door. Thank you. Michael nodded before following Gaia through the door. As soon as Michael entered the room, he felt like he had entered a penthouse instead of a showroom. Take a seat. Surprisingly, a dark elf greeted them, sitting behind an oak table flanked by black roses the size of a small child. The man looked similar to the dark elves Michael met in Essia village. Like them, the room's dark elf had silvery hair and brownish skin. They could see thin lines of a tattoo design behind the dark elf's green robes but couldn't make out the complete design. As they approached the dark elf, 3 wooden chairs emerged from the ground for them to sit. Eve and Gaia glanced around the room yet found not a single herb or an ingredient in the room. All they could find were book racks, wooden tables with parchments, and a giant portrait of the dark elf before them. Visit. For the best no_vel_ng experience, tell me, what do you need? Ebola wasn't a man of many words, so he jumped straight into business without beating around the bushes. While waiting for Gaia to take out the list, Michael noticed the dark elf looking at Eve like he was scanning her. Luckily, the dark elf said no words, but Michael was sure the dark elf found Eve was sick. Master Aloba glanced at the list of items Michael wrote on the paper without showing any kind of expression on his face. A few seconds later, Ebola finally looked up at the 3 of them. Among the 3, Eve was the most nervous one as her family's fate depended on the availability of the ingredients. That explained why Eve was shaking her legs under the table nonstop. Luckily, the answer Aloba gave them immediately elevated Eve's mood. We have everything on the list. It will be 400,000 gold coins after minusing the special discount for VIP card holders. Wonderful. Well, take it. Michael beamed with joy as the dark elf nodded, showing no expression. Ebola looked like an employee who hated to come to the job he hated the most but had no choice. But, regardless of how Aloba behaved, Michael didn't mind him because he was not here to enjoy the hospitality. Wait here. Ebola rose from his chair and went to the door beside a wooden rack. How long will it take you to make the cure? Eve jerked her head in Michael's direction as soon as Aloba disappeared into the room. 5 minutes. Hear me out, will you? Gaia leaned closer to them with a plan to get super rich in her mind. It had always been Gaia's job to multiply their income, and Michael let Gaia deal with the business side of things to Gaia. She was undoubtedly better than him regarding business and financial stuff. As soon as we get the ingredients, he will make the cure and give it to you. So go home and cure your family. What will you do? Eve asked Gaia and Michael, who looked at Gaia for her answer. Promote the cure. Hearing the door creaking open again, Gaia quickly shut her mouth and leaned back on her chair. To their surprise, Ebola didn't come out carrying any ingredients. Instead, he returned to his seat and slides a silver ring toward Michael. Check if everything is there. Michael took the space ring, sending a sliver of arch energy to view the ingredients stored inside the space ring. It took Michael only a couple of seconds to confirm everything he asked for was inside. Visit. For the best known serenity experience, cool. Everything there. You can receive the ring back at the counter after you make your payment. Do you need anything else? Michael shook his head, standing up. Thank you. Michael just nodded before returning the ring to Aloba and walking out of the room. When they stepped outside, Myriad was waiting for them. "My lady, my lord, have you finished your purchase?" Myriad asked with a gentle grin that multiplied her beauty by several folds. "Yep. Back to the counter," Gaia said as Eve was already on her way to the counter in a rush. She couldn't wait, and if it wasn't for the rule of no use of arch energy inside the Aqua Palace, she would have flown to the counter. Despite seeing Eve rushing down the stairs, Myriad did not change her expression. Instead, she led them back to where they came from and reached the counter. However, Eve had already paid the amount using her pay cube and waited for Michael and Gaia with the silver space ring in her hand. "Let's go." Eve rushed Michael. "Zenna, we'd like to use your portal to get to Ysirius. How much will that cost us again?" Gaia asked Zenna behind the counter. 5,000 gold coins, my lady. Would you like Myriad to lead you to the portal? Is there somewhere we could quickly brew a potion? Gaia asked as Zenna nodded. Since my lady belongs to the proud house of Voldegards, you can use the VIP lounge of Voldegards. Only after hearing Zenna did Eve remember that they have a lounge in Aqua Palace. The latest _AP_SODIes are on website. Put a pin on the portal. We will get back to you. Now if you may, please lead the way to the Voldegards lounge. Michael asked Myriad as the elf once again led them towards the staircase. Like before, they climbed the stairs and arrived at a junction where they saw several stairs to the various parts of the building. This time, Myriad led them to the southeast staircase leading to the highest floor. Once they climbed the last staircase, they were welcomed by a brightly lit corridor. The corridor walls were painted in charcoal black and complemented by the walls with shiny marble floors. Instead of chandeliers, the runes engraved on the ceiling lit the place and gave a modernized feeling to the corridor. "This way, my lord and my lady," Myriad politely said and walked in front of them. She didn't even ask why she had to lead Eve to her own lounge. Although Eve had visited her lounge a couple of times to attend the auctions, at this moment, the distance between them and her lounge felt like an eternity. After passing through a few doors, Michael's gaze landed on the door with the name The Barnes engraved. As soon as he saw the name, his blood boiled, and his eyes reddened. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stay calm whenever he saw something related to Thusia. Luckily, Gaia noticed the name and dragged Michael away from the door. Finally, after passing the door with the door named the Hunt family, they came before the door with the Voldegards engraved in golden letters. Eve quickly flicked her wrist, taking out the VIP card. The runes brightly lit up when she placed the card on the door, and then the door clicked open. "You don't have to wait for us. Well, meet Zenna in a while." Michael dismissed Myria before stepping into the Voldegards lounge. The room itself was round, warm, and welcoming. There were lots of dark purple hangings, burnished black metal, and overstuffed sofas and armchairs upholstered in purple and black. The glass wall provided a view of a humongous stadium with thousands of seats around and a grass field in the center. This was the auction stage allocated for only special annual auctions. The stadium was big enough to rival the biggest football stadiums on Earth. The sunlight coming directly above that brightened the grass field like a natural spotlight, made the auction stadium more majestic. The Voldegards lounge also had a large, purple, wooden mantelpiece with carvings of a Pegasus on it. This was located underneath a portrait of a black-haired man wearing dark purple robes and carrying a golden crane decorated with a large ruby on top. He was the current House Lord of House Voldegard and also Eve's father, Julian Voldegard. In addition, various rose plants grown in tiny pots stood on wooden circular shework curved to fit the walls, and copper-bottomed plant holders dangled amid the ceiling with ferns and ivies. Michael immediately conjured the emerald green alchemy flames as Eve and Gaia felt the heat radiating from the flames. While the flames were dancing above his palm, Gaia waved her hand as various ingredients materialized on the glass table before them. The anticipation to see the cure prevented Eve from plunging into the overstuffed sofa. Instead, she stood still, looking at Michael throwing ingredient after ingredient into the flame to refine them. "Relax, he got this," Gaia calmly said to calm Eve's nerves and stop her from shivering, but her words alone weren't enough to calm Eve down. The following minutes dragged forever as Eve stared at the colorful beads emerging from the flame without batting an eye. On the other hand, Gaia couldn't hold her excitement. Even the crackling sound resembling wood crack in the fire sounded like music to her. To Michael, however, there wasn't anything dramatic but business as usual. He knew the formula and had all the ingredients, so brewing the potion wasn't a difficult task. After a long couple of minutes, Eve finally saw a sparkling purple liquid dance above the green flames. Soon, the air became sweeter, and they could smell lavender in the air. The liquid danced according to Michael's movement. Finally, after the green flames disappeared, he turned his gaze towards Eve. Visit. For a better user experience, open your mouth. Without asking any questions, Eve opened her mouth like a child as Michael moved the potion into her mouth. Michael and Gaia waited for Eve to swallow the potion. A few seconds later, Eve just closed her eyes, feeling the warm sensation all over her body. To be honest, she couldn't help closing her eyes and smiling. It felt like an eternity since she experienced the warmth of arch energy running through her energy veins. Little by little, her strength returned to her body, and so did the rosiness of her skin. Eve took several deep breaths before finally opening her eyes. "You're cured." Michael just smiled despite having performed a miracle. On the other hand, Gaia tiptoed, trying to control her excitement. "How do you feel?" Gaia asked, stepping towards Eve. "Great. I am actually cured." "You did it." Eve's eyes turned watery, and a few drops of tears rolled out of her eyes. Following her tears, Eve let out a relieved smile. "Ow!" But suddenly, Eve dashed at them and hugged Gaia and Michael tightly. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Eve could barely speak those words through the lump in her throat. She felt relieved and delighted at the same time. With the cure, she would be able to cure all her family. "Just promise me you won't hug us again after you cure your family." Since Gaia wasn't a big fan of hugging people except for Michael, she declared with a sigh. "I told you I have the cure." Michael patted Eve's back and gently pushed Eve away to wipe her tears. "Now just give me a few minutes." Michael conjured his flames again to brew more cures for Eve's family. It took Michael almost 15 minutes to brew 20 potions. In the meantime, Gaia and Eve discussed distributing the cure and opening a majestic store in Ysirius. Since the Voldigares owned many properties in Ysirius, Eve insisted Gaia take one of her buildings and establish the majestic. The business-minded Gaia naturally accepted such an offer and agreed with a wide ear-to-ear grin. Visit. For a better user experience. Michael put the cure inside his space ring before walking out of the room with Eve and Gaia. The trio directly went to the counter. "My lord, my lady." Zenda greeted them with the brightest smile as though she was meeting them for the first time. "Take her to the portal," Gaia asked Zenda as Eve quickly took out the pay cube. The purple cube glowed in Zenda's hands. The light shot out from the cube formed the number 5000. After the number faded away, Myriad approached them again. "If you may, my lady," Myriad gestured at Eve to follow her. "We will meet you after we are done here." Michael patted her shoulder with a nod. "Take this." Eve handed over the VIP card to Michael. Afterwards, Eve didn't linger any longer as she nodded at Michael and Gaia before following Myriad to the portal. This time, they didn't go to the stairs but walked around the hall and disappeared through a door. "Zenda, if we want to put something precious in an auction, who should we meet?" Gaia leaned on the marble counter and asked Zenda in a low-pitched voice. "I can take the item and take it to our appraisers, my lady." However, Gaia shook her head. "I was thinking about meeting the one in charge of the annual. The item we have can save thousands of people. So it's pretty important. Since you have a VIP card, I can arrange a meeting with our manager Lord Anfaler, my lady." "That would be great." Gaia grinned from ear to ear. "Please wait a few minutes, my lady, my lord." Zenda turned around, walking into the room behind her. "They can't figure out the formula using the list of ingredients we bought, right?" Gaia whispered to Michael. She knew many alchemists who had recreated someone else's potion or pill formula by bribing the place where the alchemist buys the ingredients. For example, suppose an alchemist had a list of ingredients to refine a particular pill or potion. In that case, they could eventually come up with the formula. That was why many alchemists keep the list of ingredients needed for a potion or pill a secret and only buy the ingredients from a highly reputed place. Although Aqua Place was a highly reputed place, she didn't trust the elves. The latest _AP_SODIs are on website. I am not an amateur. I didn't need half the items in that list. Even the heavenly alchemists won't be able to find my formula. Michael smirked. Among the ingredients they bought, Michael only used a few of them because he wrote others to confuse if anyone tried to recreate the formula using the list. Michael didn't trust the elves either. They waited for another couple of minutes and finally, Zenla walked out of the room again. Lord Anfaler will meet you now, my lord, my lady. Go straight and enter the third door on the left. Instead of leading them, Zenla provided them with instructions. Thank you. Michael nodded with a smile and entered through the door. Many of the elves in the hall creased their brows, seeing Michael entering the staff-only place. They wondered what the human was up to and who he was. They already began to murmur among themselves to find out who he was. Typically, they wouldn't bother with a human, but after seeing his cultivation level, they were startled. After all, every fusion stage cultivator they had met was old. Even Layla Alden wasn't as young as Michael when she reached the fusion stage. Michael, on the other hand, was flooded with system notifications. He received 20,000 badass points in a few minutes, literally doing nothing. Ignoring the notifications, Michael walked into the brightly lit corridor, resembling the one upstairs. This is the place, Gaia said, looking at the name Anfaler Hurdy engraved in gold on the red oak door. Please come in. Suddenly, a chill, warm and welcoming voice came from the other side, as though someone inside sensed them waiting outside. Michael opened the door to see an arranged room and an elf behind a glass table. The elf who greeted them bore a welcoming smile on his face. Unlike Aloba, the elf radiated warmth and friendliness. Like any elf, Anfelin was blessed with perfect jaw structure, glossy skin, striking blonde hair, and hazel eyes. He was tall enough to be considered a tall man, and despite his soul-refining stage cultivation, he looked approachable. It was quite slurping to see an elf smiling so widely and being so welcoming to them. Normally, the elves would be cold towards anyone except elves. Please be seated. Would you like some freshly brewed tea? The elf pointed at the marble cup and tea saucer set on the glass table. No, thanks, Lord Anfaler. Michael politely rejected the offer as the elf sat before them. So I heard you have something valuable to add to our annual auction. Normally, we wouldn't take any item at this point, but since you are friends of Lady Eve, we can make an exception. Anfaler leaned forward. Have you heard of the plague in there, Lord Anfaler? Regardless of how much she hated the elves, she talked to Anfaler with a face full of smiles. Of course, bad business. Her Imperial Majesty will soon declare the lockdown, and I hope they come up with a cure. Otherwise, who knows how many lives would be lost to the plague. That's what we wanted to auction, the cure for the plague. As soon as Anfaler heard Gaia, the smile on his face froze. But soon he snapped out of the surprise. Here, Michael retrieved the potion from his system storage and placed it on the table. Visit. For a better user experience, 90% pure. It will cure the sickness in a couple of minutes. No side effects, Gaia explained as Anfaler took the potion to examine it closer. If I may, where did you find this? I brewed it. Are you an alchemist? The alchemist. I am sure you have heard of Ghost, the #1 alchemist of Elon and probably Azair. Your Ghost? Anfaler was pleasantly surprised to see a young prodigy like Michael in person. Even in many related to the alchemy field have heard about Michael, especially after what happened in Azair during the alchemy competition. Anfaler was one of the elves who admired and respected Michael despite their racial differences. One and only, Michael nodded. I have to ask, if you have the cure, why not sell them yourself? If I am right, you have a store. Don't get me wrong, the cure is a big thing. But I don't think it'll be worth the while to put it in the auction. Somehow Michael wasn't surprised to hear his words. Merchants like him would always put profits and well-being of their own above everything else. Hear me out, Lord Anphalon. We don't want you to auction the cure and give us the coins. Whatever you make with the cure by selling it, you can have it all. Gaia initiated the negotiation as Anphalon turned his gaze towards Gaia. Let me get this straight. You want us to auction the cure and take all the coins ourselves. You don't want anything? Correct? Gaia nodded. You can have it all. We don't want a single coin. Anphalon was speechless until Gaia explained her plans to him. You will get coins and get promotion in one of the biggest stages. It's a win-win situation. Moreover, we are planning to venture into the treacherous ocean. If you do this favor, choose the Aqua Palace to auction the rare items we get there. Visit. For a better user experience, Gaia sweetened the pot by mentioning the treacherous ocean. For a few moments, the elf was completely taken aback by surprise. Of course, no sane one would venture into the treacherous ocean voluntarily. Still, after seeing Ghost's cultivation level, Anphalon didn't think they would surely die. Besides, it was a great deal for the Aqua Palace. They would be the first ones to introduce the cure. First, however, Anphalon wanted to check if they really had the cure. Have you tested the cure? Anphalon asked without agreeing to Gaia's terms yet. Yes, we cured the Voldegards with the cure. Here, take this and test it on a sick one. Gaia placed another potion on the table. Anphalon didn't say no to another potion. He had a sick one as Aqua Palace was researching the plague and trying to find a cure. In fact, every single major organization was working hard to come up with a cure. Whoever finds the cure first could earn millions as well as the Empress' favor. It'll be with you in a few minutes. Please make yourselves at home. Taking the two potions, Anphalon left the room, leaving Michael and Gaia behind. Although Anphalon left the room, several recording stones were hidden in places such as inside the chandelier above, behind the bear statue on the table, and on top of a portrait watching Michael and Gaia. They were like CCTV cameras recording everything. Michael could easily disable them with the system. But instead, Michael put his hands behind him and released the spiders. The little spiders quickly camouflaged themselves with the environment and crawled away. Since they were being watched, Michael and Gaia didn't speak to each other. Instead, they acted casual and stared at the big stadium outside. The auction is next week, right? Gaia nodded. This was the only conversation they had until Anphalon returned almost after 10 minutes. Sorry for keeping you waiting. So what your scholars tell you, Lord Anphalon? Michael asked. Seeing Anphalon not answering, Michael smiled. Oh, come on, Lord Anphalon, you have to test the cure. I completely understand that. How can you take something and accept it as a cure for the plague? Anphalon looked a bit flustered because of the cure's effectiveness. The Aqua Palace had a few sicknesses underground and studied them to find the cure. So Anphalon just had to give the potion to one of the test subjects to validate the potion. Every scholar, alchemist, and healer responsible for finding the cure was completely startled when they saw the potion cure the sick in a couple of minutes. The cure was legit. The Aqua Palace wasn't swindlers. Many others would have said the cure was fake, killed Ghost, and tried to replicate the potion to sell the potions themselves. If they wanted Ghost dead, the Aqua Palace had all the resources to kill him despite his cultivation level. However, that is not how Aqua Palace conducted business. The latest _AP_SODIs are on website. I can put the cure to the auction, but the Aqua Palace needs something else. Anphalon may be warm, welcoming, and friendly, but he was still a merchant in blood. So Michael and Gaia weren't surprised to see him asking for something in return and negotiating for more. But, to be honest, they were both expecting. Please! Michael gestured at Anphalon to continue. The Aqua Palace wants to help you distribute the cure throughout the continent, Master Ghost. Michael's smile disappeared as he creased his brows. What do you mean throughout the continent, Lord Anphalon? The last time I heard, only Thera has this plague. Anphalon leaned forward and talked in a low-pitched voice. Can I trust that you won't tell a soul what I am about to tell you? Of course, Lord Anphalon. You have my word. Michael nodded. The plague isn't restricted to Thera. A village has been put under lockdown in Sil Allery. We heard the news that people are also turning up with the same plague symptoms in other kingdoms. Each kingdom is doing its best to contain the news, but eventually, the news will spread across the continent. Soon, the molten plague will affect the entire continent. Molten plague. That's what they named the plague? And Phelan nodded at Gaia and turned his gaze back at Michael. So basically, I am sitting on a gold mine? And Phelan saw a cold, opportunistic grin on Ghost's face that showed his other side. A gold mine that puts a target on your back, and Phelan said in a grave voice. I know you've been using the Rainshade Merchant Guild to distribute your products. No offense to them, but they won't be able to handle this. Because the moment the molten plague breaks out, the continent will be turned upside down. Those who weren't affected will run around like rabid dogs, and if they heard there's a cure, they would go to any length to get their hands on it. Forget about the cure, the rogues will target the source. The Rainshade Guild's strongest is a soul refiner. How could they fight against fusion stage cultivators? The latest _AP_SODIs are on website. The news was simply too shocking to Gaia. If what Phelan said was true, even the Empress isn't safe anymore. No matter how big of an army she had, no one could fight the plague. She wouldn't be surprised if the Aqua Palace itself sabotaged their supply lines and blamed it on the rogue cultivators. But, as far as she was concerned, Phelan was a good guy to extend a helping hand instead of sabotaging them or simply killing them. So let's negotiate, Lord Phelan. What's the Aqua Palace's cut? 30%. Gaia immediately shook her head. 25%. And you will provide us with ingredients. Gaia gave Phelan her counteroffer, and surprisingly, he considered it for a few moments. Yet, he didn't simply agree to Gaia's terms. Instead, the both of them began to negotiate for almost 30 minutes. Their negotiation felt like a battle. But, to Michael's surprise, it was quite entertaining to see Gaia negotiate. She would have been a successful CEO of a major enterprise if she was born on Earth. Phelan had the experience, but Gaia had talent, pure natural talent for business. When they ended their negotiation, Phelan agreed to take a 20% cut and supply them with all the ingredients. In return, Michael had to give them exclusivity to the cure. That meant the Aqua Place would get 20% wherever he sells the cure. Even if he sells the cure in Majestic, a 20% cut had to be paid to the Aqua Palace. On top of getting free ingredients, Michael would get the protection of the Aqua Palace. In addition, Phelan would help Ghost get a VIP card in Aqua Palace. Gaia tried to get a VIP card as a part of the deal, but it wasn't in the hands of Phelan. So instead, the Arctic Hall would decide who to give the VIP card to every 5 years. Unfortunately, they offered new VIP cards last year, so Michael had to wait for 4 more years. Where should I send the contract to? To the Voldegard's mansion. He'll be staying there, said Michael as Phelan made a mental note. When can we expect the first batch of Cure Master Ghost? Let the molten plague spread more, Lord Phelan. Phelan's jaw dropped a couple of inches when he heard Michael. Not that Phelan hadn't seen ruthless people, but he didn't expect Ghost to be this cruel. He looked like such a warm, gentle young man, but his words made Phelan think Ghost was more brutal than he seemed. We can start distributing the cure after the auction. That'd be enough for everyone to panic and feel desperate for the cure. Meanwhile, we will provide the people with healing potions. It will keep the people alive. Gaia leaned back and said to Phelan, Speaking of healing potions, I heard someone is hoarding my potions and selling them for a high price, Lord Phelan. Do you have any idea where I could find such a person? Visit. For a better user experience, Michael was right to ask Lord Phelan because the black market was a huge headache for the merchants in R. What they do is buy a particular product in bulk and hoard it until the product is not available for the consumers. By doing this, they raised the demand too high, and when the people were desperate, they would sell it for a high price. As a result, black marketers made millions. It was really unfortunate Michael's healing potions drew the attention of these black marketers. It's not a single-person master ghost, but rather a shadow organization who simply calls themselves the Black Marketers. They lack creativity, unlike wealth. Every merchant guild has been affected by them. Although we would like to track them down and bring them to justice, it's not an easy task. To be honest, it's pretty impossible. They weren't found because I haven't tried Lord Phelan, Michael smirked. With the devices Michael had under his disposal, it would be a matter of time before Michael found the black marketers. They made a massive mistake by scalping Michael's healing potions. And Phelan had a feeling the black marketers may have just made a nemesis they shouldn't have. Anyways, if Ghost somehow got rid of the black marketers, it would be profitable to all the merchant guilds, including the Aqua Palace. Then, we will see you next week? Gaia stood up to leave the room. I'll be waiting. And Phelan shook both their hands firmly before walking them out as a courtesy. After talking to Phelan, Michael was glad he attended the alchemy competition and received the token to bid. According to Phelan, even he couldn't give any more tokens. If Michael didn't get it from the Alchemist's Guild, he couldn't have taken part in the bidding and depended on Eve to bid for him. You really embraced the darkness, huh? Gaia asked after Phelan sent them away. I didn't create or spread the plague. I am just taking advantage of it. Michael didn't feel any remorse at all. He wasn't Noah to run around the continent and try to cure every single sick person. Instead, Michael decided to wait until R was pushed to the brink of destruction. Then, he would come up with the cure and earn millions. The vampires spread the plague, but Michael was the one who will reap the benefits. Michael and Gaia directly went to the counter and received another space ring with enough ingredients to brew the first batch of cures. We'd like to use the portal to Ysirius now, Zenna. Michael took out his pay cube and handed it over to Zenna. Then, just like before, the number 5000 appeared in the form of a holograph above the pay cube. It was the middle of the day when Michael and Gaia appeared in the sky out of nowhere. Unlike the portals they've been using before, the portal in Aqua Palace teleported them to the sky above Ysirius instead of into a building. The drizzling clouds added an extra layer of gloominess to the already plague-stricken city. The air itself turned slightly palish green, giving the city a depressive look. Visit. For a better user experience, Michael and Gaia flew straight to the floating mountain without lingering around any longer. Finally, after almost 5 minutes of flying, the mountain appeared in their sight. Unlike before, they saw a few people gathered around Nightmare. When Michael and Gaia got closer to the island, Nightmare looked up to see them descending. Surprisingly, the carriage was nowhere to be found. Instead, all the sick ones were laid on the ground facing the open sky. Among the people, Michael locked his gaze with Eve and Jennifer, who were in the embrace of Julian Voldegard, Eve's father. There they are. Eve pointed her finger at Michael and Gaia as they landed a couple of meters away from Eve. As soon as they landed, a group of people surrounded Michael. Soon, Eve approached Michael with Jennifer, Julian, and a brown-haired lady with freckles. Undoubtedly, Michael knew she was Eve's mother because she looked like the mature version of Jennifer. Eve resembled her father more than her mother, but all of them seemed extremely grateful to Michael. He could see it in their eyes. Jennifer still looked a bit exhausted, just like most of them. Master Ghost and Miss Elia, I have no words to tell how grateful I am to you. Julian grabbed Michael's hand and squeezed it, showing his gratitude. On the other hand, Eve's mother embraced Gaia before she could rebuke her. The Voldegards are forever in your debt, Julian stated as everyone around Michael bobbed their heads up and down. I just helped my friend. Michael smiled. Meanwhile, Nightmare shrunk his size and flew onto Michael's shoulder. Let's cure the others and get back to the castle, Nightmare said to Julian. Nightmare is right. We can talk over a nice dinner, Lord Julian. Lord Julian and Eve's mother agreed with Michael with a nod. However, many soldiers and family members were still unconscious and waiting to be cured. Just give me 15 minutes to brew the cure for all of them. Michael shot into the sky, flying towards the top of the hilt-shaped mountain to brew the cure in peace. Gaia wanted to get out of the crowd, but unfortunately, Eve grabbed her by her hand. Where are you going? Eve smirked. Visit. For a better user experience, Gaia hated socializing with them, but Eve made sure Gaia met every single family member while Jennifer shadowed them behind. At that moment, Michael and Gaia had no idea what they were about to hear from Julian. Michael spent almost an hour in pace brewing the potions without any distractions. He enjoyed the sight of ever-expanding clouds and the distant mountains that peeked through the clouds. It soothed his soul more than he could explain with words. The waterfall's burble sound added a certain calming effect on his mind. Standing atop the mountain peak and looking at the world down made him feel truly powerful. Even after finishing brewing the cures, Michael sat in a meditative posture and began to meditate. The clouds above him moved to his rhythm every time his chest rose up and down. He didn't notice the pebbles and mud flying in a circle around him or the dark smoke emanating from his body. Fortunately, he was too far from the people down to notice everything changes. The dark smoke slowly flew towards his palm and floated like a dark orb above his hands until the dark flames emerged from his palm and enveloped the dark smoke. Soon, the dark smoke and the dark flames merged together to form a tiny black hole that sucked every pebble flying around Michael. The black hole was only the size of a dot and still was in a weak state. The black hole wasn't a spell or any that appeared due to the system. Instead, it was one of Michael's dormant powers. The more connection he had with the darkness, the more powerful he grew. He may be a fusion stage cultivator, but he was just an amateur in terms of godhood. The Sky Hall wasn't afraid of the Dark Lord because of cultivation. They feared him because of his dormant powers. The more powerful he grew, he would unshackle the cultivation bonds and become something else entirely. At that time, his powers couldn't be calculated using the cultivation stages. No spell in the entire world could create a black hole to suck everything. Yet, a black hole was floating above Michael's palm, unknowing to him. He felt more and more connected to the darkness around him until Gaia's voice in his head severed the connection. As soon as a distraction appeared, the black hole disappeared and everything around him returned to its normal state. By the time Michael opened his eyes, he didn't notice the changes. "Are the cures ready? Not to rush you, but someone is about to die if we don't give him the cure." Gaia couldn't care less about a lowly soldier of Voldegard's, and Michael could see that in her indifferent tone. "It'll be there." He took a deep breath before standing up and dashing to the edge. After he left the place where he meditated, one could see a dark spiral appear in the ground for a moment, split second, and disappear. Back on the ground, a soldier had turned completely gray and his skin looked like it was made of stone. When Michael landed on the ground, he saw Lord Julian and his family surround the soldier. They all looked worried. Seeing a lord of the house worry for a foot soldier was quite a surprise. Here, Michael threw the cure like it was nothing to Eve and stood beside Eve's family. "Sorry, Lord Julian. I couldn't resist meditating." "That place has some effect." Lord Julian looked at the top of the mountain for a moment. "Indeed. Visit." For a better user experience, Eve emptied the entire cure into the soldier's mouth. "Nightmare." Michael called for the nightmare, who comfortably sat atop Gaia's shoulder. Seeing Michael calling him, Nightmare came to Michael with a single flap of his wings. "These will be enough to cure everyone. Make sure no cure leaves this place." Michael waved his hand as a few wooden crates full of potions materialized on the ground. "Shall we take a walk, Master Ghost?" Lord Julian asked Michael. Lord Julian's eyes had a sliver of concern and Michael could see it clearly. At that moment, Michael thought Lord Julian was worried about building the Voldegards and bringing them to their former glory. After all, the Voldegards lost 3 fusion stage protectors. In a world where the fusion stage cultivators were scarce, losing 3 fusion stage warriors was devastating. They could easily survive or even be a powerhouse in Elon with the 5 soul refining stage cultivators. Still, in R, a family with 1 fusion stage protector would be like a wounded animal among a pack of hungry vultures. Sure. Michael wanted to first hear Lord Julian's plans for the family first before giving any ideas to Julian. But, as far as Michael's guts told him, Julian seemed a little bit soft. To lead House Voldegard to its former glory, Michael would prefer a leader like Eve, who was pretty ruthless and not afraid to get her hands dirty to get the job done. Leaving everyone behind, Michael and Julian walked along the stream. "Sorry, Master Ghost, for being blunt, but what's your relationship with Eve?" Michael was taken aback by Julian's question. He didn't expect Julian to ask about his relationship with Eve instead of family matters. "Are you two in love?" "No." Michael shook his head rapidly. To Michael's surprise, Julian sighed in relief. Thank the gods! Julian looked relieved and smiled. Visit. For the best notes of the experience. Wow! I didn't think I was such a bad choice for your daughter. Michael let out a small peal of laughter. Oh God, no. People would be in line to marry their daughters to you. It's just Eve is not a good fit for you. How come? Michael had no intention of marrying anyone other than Gaia, but he wanted to know why he was not a good fit for Eve. Julian took a deep breath. If she marries you, she will be in your shadows until she dies, Master Ghost. You reached the fusion stage at such a young age. Heaven-defying talents like you only appear only once in thousands of years. No doubt you will reach the immortal stage, but Eve. Julian looked at Eve, who was helping the soldiers in the distance, and sighed. She is destined to be at the core strengthening stage forever. I have done everything to make her strong and protect her from the things people talk about her behind her back. Even in our family, they want me to choose Jennifer's husband as a successor after she marries. Why not Eve's husband? Only if she agrees to get married. She put a tough wall around her, Master Ghost. But she is just a gentle girl behind that wall. Did she ever tell you about Fylvander? Michael slowly shook his head. He had never even heard of the name before. He was once Eve's fiancé. Another pleasant surprise hit Michael, hearing Julian. She fell in love with him while studying in Golden Lake Sect. Even though Fylvander was an elf, we agreed to their love because we wanted Eve to marry someone she loves rather than someone we choose for her. Lord Julian's voice cracked, showing the great pain in his heart. What happened? Michael asked. The latest _AP_SODIes are on website. After she reached the core strengthening stage, Eve and Fylvander went to Nalanthelas to meet his parents. Fylvander was an heir to one of the prominent families in Nalanthelas. He promised Eve he would convince his parents, and they also agreed to their marriage until they decided to see Eve's potential in cultivation. Once again, Lord Julian stopped talking for a moment. He couldn't speak freely due to the lump forming in her throat. Just thinking how many days he spent watching Eve crying herself to death. It took Eve almost a decade to come out of her breakup, and only now Michael knew about her life. They were the ones who told us that Eve cannot break through to the soul refining stage. She was destined to get old and die as a core strengthening stage warrior. Fylvander's parents couldn't let their precious talented son marry such a mediocre girl. So he broke the engagement and her heart before leaving for Mazeroth. Michael was glad that he got to know more about his friend. Deep down, Michael felt the urge to visit Fylvander and slaughter them all. However, something rubbed Michael in the wrong way when he heard the story. Eve was just 29 or so old. Reaching the core strengthening stage at 30 years old was considered a talent, let alone reaching the core strengthening stage at the age of 20. She was not anything but a mediocre cultivator. Nonetheless, time was such a cruel thing, as it made once a talented prodigy into a mediocre cultivator. Everything Julian had said made sense except the part where Fylvander's parents initially agreed to let their son marry a human girl. Something about their agreement and later they checked Eve about cultivation didn't sit right with Michael. He had a feeling something was amiss. I cannot let my girl go through heartbreak again. I don't think she could go through it again. You're talented, good-looking, and talented. Any girl would fall in love with you, Master Ghost Lord Julian. Michael interjected. Lord Julian. A guy and a girl can be friends without being romantically involved. Eve and I are friends. In this life, I already gave my heart to Elia. I appreciate you telling me everything, but if you ask me to stop being Eve's friend, you and I are going to have a problem. Michael's gentle smile completely vanished from his face. Instead, he looked at Julian with an intense cold look. Although Julian was at fusion stage level 8, he couldn't help but get scared by Michael. To be honest, he shuddered. I want to abandon my friend because someone who doesn't deserve Eve left her years ago. I don't have many friends, Lord Julian, only a few. I take care of each and every one of them. Even if the entire world gives up on Eve, I want. In fact, I will make her break through to the soul refining stage and prove how wrong those elves were and prove to you that Eve can lead the Voldegards to a golden age. Michael openly challenged Julian. Michael wouldn't openly challenge anyone, but at that moment, He had a fire burning inside him to make Eve stronger than every single one of them. This was the first time Michael wanted to help someone without expecting something in return. The Michael before traveling back in time would be proud of his current self. Lord Julian, who wanted to repay Michael for curing them and ask him to leave Eve, couldn't ask Ghost those things anymore. Julian knew there was no way he could convince Ghost to leave Eve. After hearing what Ghost had just said, Julian felt both happy and scared at the same time. Visit for the best no_vel_read_ng experience. Michael and Julian returned to the group after a few minutes. On their way back, Julian uttered no words to Michael. Since 50 to 60 sick people were lying on the ground, Jennifer joined Eve in giving them the cure. Took the two girls almost an hour to finish. We should return to the castle, Eve came to Julian and said. Unlike before, Eve had a smile on her face. After knowing her story, Michael's respect for Eve reached another level. Filvander may have been a married couple of elves and started his own harem, but Eve remained unmarried. There would be countless suitors for Eve if she agreed, and Michael was certain. Given a chance, Noah might add Eve to his harem. Yes, Julian. Just thinking how much cleaning we have to do is giving me a headache. Eve's mother, Ingrid Voldergaard, rubbed her temples. None of them had no idea what Ghost and Julian talked about. As far as they could guess, the two of them spoke of distributing the cure. However, Gaia sensed the tension between Julian and Michael after they returned from their little chat and could tell something had happened. It wasn't the right situation to ask Michael about what had happened. Don't worry, Lady Ingrid. I left my butler in the castle. He might surprise us. Michael surprised them. You have a butler? Eve raised her brows. Not only Eve but everyone who heard Michael was shocked. Typically a king or a queen would have a butler. But except for Eve and Jennifer, the rest didn't know that Michael was the king of Bradford. Michael nodded. Let's go. Michael wanted to leave the mountain, so he could brew cures non-stop and store them in his system storage. He'll lead the way. Eve was about to take off when Michael called her. You go first. He'll be with you in a while. Gaia and Nightmare knew why Michael wanted to stay behind. Unlike the rest, the trio possessed more powerful sensing abilities. Nightmare was a dragon who had an innate ability to sense arch energy flow in a unique way. Gaia was a Naga who possessed heightened senses, and Michael had the environmental scanning map to sense hostile activities nearby. Why? Asked Eve. He'll tell you later. Now go. Michael's voice became stern and serious. It showed Eve something was amiss and serious. Hence, she didn't waste any time lingering around. Visit. For a better user experience, everyone, head to the compound. Eve ordered. No one dared to disagree with her order. Thus, everyone took off from the floating mountain before being towards Michael one last time to show their gratitude. After they all disappeared into the horizon, only Eve and her family stayed with Michael. Master Ghost, is something wrong? Julian asked. Although Julian may have wanted to protect Eve from getting heartbreak, he still wouldn't turn his back on Ghost, who helped his family in their most desperate times. Besides, Julian didn't completely come to grasp how he felt about Ghost. A part of him wanted Ghost to be Eve's friend. Another part wanted Ghost to stay as far as possible from Eve, so she wouldn't develop any feelings for Ghost. Eve, take your family and leave this place as quickly as possible. Master Ghost, what is happening? Ingrid asked with concern. I am going to kill someone. Michael amplified his voice with arch energy, sounding as deafening as a thunderclap. Eve, unless you want your family to become collateral, you should leave the place. Jennifer, mother, let's go. After hearing the seriousness in Eve's voice, she didn't dare to linger any longer. However, she didn't take her father away because Eve wanted Ghost to have a backup. Nightmare. Make sure they dash. Michael halted his sentence when he suddenly sensed a blockade appearing around them. What the? Eve creased her brows because no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't take off. It felt like an external force forced them to stay on the ground. I hate people sneaking up on me, so why don't you show yourself, Reaper? Michael said, slowly turning around to face the waterfall. Jennifer, who was the weakest among them, neither sensed nor saw anyone. In her perspective, there was no one around them. But at that time, Julian sensed a powerful being 50 meters away from them. So Julian spread his senses only to see the invisible being was just as strong as him. "They told me you'll be a tricky target." Suddenly Jennifer heard a silvery voice, but she couldn't see who just talked. "Visit. For the best no underserved experience, Lord Julian. I am only getting paid to take him down. But if you try to interject, you and every single one in your precious family will have a target on their back." The voice echoed through the mountain. He said, "Show yourself." Nightmare growled as he released a stream of hot air from his nostrils. The stream turned into an arrow and shot towards the waterfall. Since Jennifer saw no one before her, she thought the arrow would reach the waterfall. However, the arrow suddenly stopped in its path. Soon, the air distorted to reveal a warrior adorning silver armor under a dark cloak. The wolf head pendant hanging around his neck was a dead giveaway to which organization he belonged. The Grim Reapers. As far as Jennifer could see, there were no symbols or intricate designs on his silver armor. It was just plain armor made of silver. She couldn't see his face because he covered his face with a lion mask. "Let me guess, someone put a bounty on my head. I wonder how much this time." Michael remained calm. The Reaper was at the fusion stage level 8. Still, it wasn't enough to scare Michael, especially when Michael had the fear toxin mixed with the strain of molten plague. "Why can't you just live without pissing off people? I feel bad to kill such a talented young man." The Reaper sighed. "Back off, Reaper. Master Ghost is a guest of House Voldegard. Raising your blade against him will be considered raising your blade against the House Voldegard." Julian stepped forward, threatening the Reaper only to see the Reaper burst into laughter. "Lord Julian, you are in no palace to threaten me. Take my advice and back off. You have such a beautiful family. It'd be a pity to lose them. Why don't you make your move and find out?" Eve's hammer materialized in her hand. Just like Julian, she stepped forward to fight for Ghost despite her cultivation stage. "It's my fight, Eve." Michael patted Eve on the back and walked forward. "Lord Julian, take your family and get out of here," Michael said to Julian, but he and Eve seemed reluctant. "Get out!" Michael's thunderous shout echoed through the area as the Sword Hilt Mountain trembled. As a result of his shout, rocks crumbled down from the mountain. The latest _AP_SODIes are on website. The single shout was enough to terrify Jennifer and Ingrid. Even Eve took a step back. "Come on." Nightmare quickly grew to his original size and shielded the family under his wings. He pushed them back. After seeing how Michael reacted, Julian couldn't stay here with Ghost. It was his fight and Ghost wanted them to leave the area. Besides, Julian didn't want his family to be collateral damage in a battle between two fusion stage cultivators. As a father and a husband, his first priority was to ensure his family's safety. "Eve, go with Nightmare. The Reapers are unpredictable. They will use you and your family against Ghost," Gaia stated. Meanwhile, the Reaper patiently waited for the family to leave. However, Michael wondered one thing. They were about to leave before the Reaper revealed himself. They would have already left the mountain if the Reaper hadn't revealed himself. Instead, the Reaper prevented them from leaving, exposing himself and letting them go. System, buy a teleportation scroll and transfer it to Gaia's space ring. Michael quickly entered the system and bought a teleportation scroll. Suppose the Reapers were planning an ambush for the Voldegards. Gaia could teleport them to the Aqua Palace. Gaia sensed a new item in her space ring. Even without Michael explaining, she understood his plans. So she took Eve and her family to leave the mountain. Bring his head to the feast, Ghost. Eve didn't cry or form tears like typical girls. Instead, she had confidence in Ghost's strength despite the cultivation difference between him and the Reaper. So much confidence in her friend. The Reaper slowly clapped for Eve until everyone disappeared into the horizon. Finally, Michael and the Reaper were alone in the floating mountain. "Do you happen to know who put the bounty on my head?" "Jeesh, I am really getting sick of you Reapers." Michael massaged his temples. As he said, the Reapers were really annoying him. If he didn't have so many things to do, he would have made destroying the Grim Reapers a priority. You're a regular target in our guild, Ghost. So you know how my guild works. That's true. I kinda like this place, so let's try not to do too much damage to it. Okay? Michael said, cracking his neck. Visit. For the best no NG experience, I will try. The Reaper nodded. Then 2 energy swords materialized in his hand. One radiated crimson red light while the other shone in bright blue. Fancy, said Michael, admiring the 2 energy swords. The battle excitement began to course through his veins. Normally, Michael would avoid battles. This fight, however, he couldn't avoid. Thus, Michael decided to use the Reaper as a dummy to test his limits. The Reaper and Michael dashed at each other. In a midway before clashing with the Reaper, Michael took out his 2 swords from his sheath hanging on his back. Cling! The energy swords and Michael's metal swords clashed, creating sparks of fire. Both of them didn't go for any spells but fought using their weapons. Still, a clash between 2 fusion stage cultivators wasn't a joke. Each time their swords clashed, the ground beneath them trembled. To Michael's surprise, the Reaper was an exceptional swordsman. Otherwise, the Reaper couldn't have defended Michael's barrage of sword attacks. Michael was one of Elon's most powerful offensive swordsmen, and the Reaper had the best defense. So their clash was something magnificent to witness. This is exhilarating. Michael raised his voice. Their battle produced barrages of lightning cracks, creating flashes of colorful rays. Then, unknowing to Michael, he pushed the Reaper from one end to another. They left a deep trail in the ground and almost split it in half. Boom! Michael pushed the Reaper against the hilt peak and swung his sword to cleave the Reaper's head. But the Reaper was able to evade as Michael's sword hit the mountain, carving a deep V-shaped cut. The entire mountain shivered. To defend himself, the Reaper shot towards the sky. Their speed was equal to a bullet. An ordinary cultivator wouldn't be able to see their bodies, but only the crumbling rocks raining down. You're good, the Reaper shouted, flying towards the mountain peak. Did you think it's going to be easy? Michael suddenly threw his sword upwards and fought with one sword and his bare hand. Boom! 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 Michael defended the energy swords with his swords while throwing punches at the Reaper using the other hand. Every time the Reaper missed a punch, it landed in the mountain. As a result, the mountain trembled. More and more chunks of rocks crumbled down onto the ground. Their battle sounded louder than any thunderclaps. Fortunately, there was no village or city underneath the floating mountain. Otherwise, the huge chunks of rocks crumbling down would have greatly damaged the people. The latest _AP_SODs are on website. Arg! The Reaper threw his one energy sword away to fight with one sword. He let out a thunderous battle cry before swinging his sword more violently. He wanted to put Michael onto the defense. Ha 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 ha, however. The Reaper saw Michael burst into mad laughter. The Reaper could swear he saw a dark silhouette behind Ghost as he fought. But he shoved all his other thoughts to the back of his mind. A single slip of focus could end his life after all. Despite the cultivation difference between them, Michael gained the upper hand. Typically, a fusion stage level 4 cultivator would have a difficult time fighting a level 8. Yet Michael was anything but typical. For levels of difference were nothing to Michael. In fact, he was stronger than the Reaper at the moment because they both hadn't used a spell yet. Iron Gauntlet! But suddenly, the Reaper cast a spell. Since the fusion stage cultivators didn't need to utter the spell, Michael was caught off guard by the sudden appearance of a giant gauntlet behind him. The giant gauntlet was at least 10 meters long and 5 meters wide. Even though the gauntlet was created using Celestian energy, it looked like it was made of pure iron. Boom! Lightning Dash! Michael cast the lightning dash to turn himself into a lightning bolt and dashed upwards before the iron gauntlet bashed the mountain. When the gauntlet collided with the mountain cracked. As a result, the water flowed into the crack, and the majestic waterfall slowly disappeared. I liked that waterfall, Michael growled. Luckily, they both reached the peak, and the moment Michael reached the peak, he raised his hand. The sword Michael threw into the air before fell directly into his hand. Wing Blast! Before the Reaper could cast another spell, Michael raised his hand, sending a powerful blast of wind to the Reaper. The wind blasted the Reaper onto the mountain peak while Michael still hovered in the wind. Eagle wings. The Reaper quickly cast another spell, as the ground beneath him emerged to form a shield resembling an eagle's wing around the Reaper. The wall shield protected the Reaper from the wind blast. Still, the wind blast was powerful enough to destroy half of the shield. Wing blast. Michael sent another powerful blast of wind to destroy the rest of the shield. But when the wind blast obliterated the wall, the Reaper was nowhere to be found. Out of nowhere, the Reaper materialized behind Michael in the air. Michael's neck hair immediately stood up, sensing the danger, yet Michael was a second late to react in time. It was not Michael who was slow, but the Reaper was fast. Fortunately, the Reaper aimed with the intention to pierce Michael's heart, but Michael evaded getting stabbed through the shoulder. Visit. For the best no-underserved experience finally. After stabbing Michael, the Reaper stopped moving, and so did Michael. Not bad. Michael grabbed the energy sword sticking out of his shoulder and grinned. Instead of showing signs of pain, the Reaper saw a devilish grin when Ghost turned around. The energy sword radiated intense heat and would burn the victim's skin. Anyone who got stabbed with the sword would definitely be in severe pain despite their cultivation stage. The Reaper had seen countless cultivators scream and even cry in agony after being stabbed. But for the first time in his 150-years-old life, he had seen someone grin. Michael wasn't faking it or using APD either to fight the pain. In fact, Michael didn't feel any pain at all. His body and soul were infused with dark flames, one of the most powerful primordial flames in the universe. The heat radiated by the energy sword was nothing compared to the heat of the dark flames. As to why Michael grinned, it was because he had found out he felt no pain from the heat-radiating sword at all. Initially, when the Reaper stabbed him, he felt a sting, but afterward he felt nothing. Wind blast. Michael grabbed the energy sword with one hand and sent a blast of wind with the other, blasting the Reaper away. At the moment, the two of them were hovering in the mid-air above the floating mountain. This is true power, Michael smirked, slowly pulling out the sword. The red light emanated by the energy sword flickered in his hand. When Michael pulled out the energy sword, the Reaper saw the wound closing visible to the naked eye without Ghost taking any healing potions. Why don't we finish this fight? Michael snickered. On the other hand, the Reaper reached out for the energy sword in Michael's hand, trying to summon the sword. The sword frantically trembled in Michael's hand to escape his grasp. Seeing the sword couldn't escape Ghost's grasp, the Reaper creased his brows underneath his mask. "Return to me," the Reaper shouted. But no matter how hard the Reaper tried to summon the sword, the Reaper failed to get his hand on the sword. Impossible. The Reaper panicked because the sword could not be controlled by anyone weaker than him. He had special runes on the sword to ensure the sword would always return to him. At that moment, a weaker cultivator like Ghost overpowered the sword, which shouldn't have been possible. The Reaper's mind was boggled until he lost the connection with his sword. Soon, the Reaper felt weak and exhausted. He even tumbled down a few meters without any control over his body. "What's happening?" the Reaper asked Michael, feeling his connection to the celestial energy slowly declining. In a couple of moments, the Reaper went from the fusion stage to the core strengthening stage cultivator, rapidly weakening by the second. Visit. For a better user experience, I found the cure for the molten plague. So it wasn't challenging to weaponize the plague, Michael smirked. The air you breathed wasn't purely natural. In simple words, I poisoned you without even you noticing. The Reaper's vision blurred as he started to vomit dark blood. Additionally, the Reaper's skin gradually turned gray, and his hair lost its shininess. Michael looked down for a moment before turning his gaze back at the Reaper. "Wow, you'll be a human omelet by the time you hit the ground. Your Reaper's friends will have a hard time scrapping you off the ground if they found you. That is," Michael laughed. From the moment he sensed the Reaper, Michael began to release the fear toxin from his APD. Simply put, Michael defeated the Reaper even before the battle started. Michael just wanted to see his fusion stage powers and how powerful his spells have gotten. Otherwise, Michael could have dragged his conversation with the Reaper until the fear toxin took effect. By battling the Reaper, Michael found out his vulnerabilities. You weaponized the plague? Why? The Reaper asked, coughing up more blood. Why else? Money. By this time next week, the entire R will be struck by the plague. Desperation will take hold of R, including the Empress. A man with a cure will be like a god at that time. I can name whatever the price I want. The Reaper didn't utter any word for a moment. He had seen hundreds of ruthless and evil beings in his life, but Ghost was the evilest two-faced demon he had ever seen. You still have time, Reaper. You may not know who put the bounty on my head, but you know the location of your guild. Reveal the location and I'll give you the cure. We can pretend like this never happened. Michael offered the Reaper a choice to live. You have a minute to decide, Reaper. After that, you'll fall to death. Michael didn't show any emotion in his tone. As the Reaper slowly lost the connection with the arch-energy, his mind told him to take the offer. The Reapers were known for their brutality and ruthlessness, not for loyalty to the guild. They always valued their lives and money over allegiance to the guild. Thus, the Reaper was tempted to reveal the location in exchange for the cure. He couldn't simply trust Ghost's words, but he had no choice either. TikTok Reaper. TikTok. Visit. For a better user experience. The Reaper gave Ghost's offer a deep thought. But, since he was losing the connection with arch-energy rapidly, the Reaper had to make a choice quickly before he fell to death. Give me the cure first. The Reaper tried his luck only to get no response from Ghost. Fine. Here, this is the map to the guild where I picked up the assassination contract with your name on it. The Reaper quickly accessed his space ring and threw a parchment to Michael, who caught the map. Michael opened the parchment to see the map of the R continent, which was divided into 3 elven kingdoms, 2 dwarven kingdoms, 1 large beastmen kingdom, 1 orc kingdom, and finally 1 kingdom ruled by a human king. Even after being divided into 8 kingdoms, a vast piece of land was occupied by a barren snowy mountain chain to the north. Michael searched for Nagaland on the map of R but found it very far from the continent. Nagaland wasn't a part of the mainland. Instead, it was a large island almost a quarter the size of R. The Grim Reaper's Guild was located between Sil Allery and Thera in the forest. It was marked with a red cross. Now give me the cure. The Reaper's voice became weak as Michael predicted. I did give you my word. Michael slowly hovered towards the Reaper with the cure in his hand. How do I know it's the cure and not poison? Asked the Reaper. You don't? Michael simply smirked as he reached an arm's distance from the Reaper. Then, Michael handed over the cure to the Reaper, who looked at the potion for a few moments before ultimately deciding to drink it. It was not like the Reaper had a choice to. Pulch! The Reaper's hand froze in time, a few inches away from his mouth. A second later, the Reaper coughed up blood and looked down to see Michael's hand going through his chest. You fucking bastard! The Reaper snarled at Michael with his last few dying breaths. Death will get to you? Death can't have me until I want to greet it, Michael whispered into the Reaper's ear, holding the Reaper's heart in his hand. The heart was still beating in Michael's hand until he crushed it into a bloody paste. Mission failed. Reaper? Michael devilishly grinned, looking at the Reaper free falling down. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a fusion stage, level 8 cultivator. The reward is 750,000 experience points and 10,000 badass points. Hey system, what's the deal? I get the same amount of experience points for killing both level 8 and level 2 cultivators? Yes. After the fusion stage, every higher stage will get a fixed number of experience points regardless of levels. But why? Michael frowned. Because the system needs to change the host's body from the molecular level. Anything more or less than a fixed number of experience points will be harmful to the host and prevent the host from reaching immortality. Michael's frown got replaced by a grin when he heard the word immortality. Reaching immortality was Michael's initial desire when he came to this world. If it wasn't for all the Dark Lord business, immortality would have been his only sole purpose in this world. Now, it was a weapon and a shield for him to face his enemies. Speaking of immortality, the system urges the host to upgrade the system to the next level. You cannot reach the half-immortal stage with the current level. After hearing the system's words, Michael willed the system to show his status window. Host. Michael cultivation level. Fusion stage. Level 4 experience points. 750. 000/1. 000. 000 badass points. 320. 000 skills and spells. Wind Blast. LVL 6 visit. For the best no_vel_read_ng experience responsive shield. LVL 8 environment scanning. LVL 6 ignitia. LVL 8 lightning dash. LVL 6 energy devour. LVL 2 soul eater. LVL 1 death range. LVL 3 eyes of darkness. Normal. Can sense the cultivation level of others' eyes of darkness. Lucifer. Can sense the cultivation level of others. Can see through illusions cloud of darkness. Lucifer. Weak-willed enemies will lose their courage completely and surrender. Death range will be 50% more powerful, and if activated in darkness, the host's cultivation level will be boosted 4 levels up regardless of the stage barrier. Wordless spellcaster, Lucifer. In full Lucifer form, the host just has to think of the spell to cast it. Techniques: Swords of Destiny 98% Mastery, Ring of Fire 94% Mastery, Serpent Maga 98% Mastery, Occupation. Core Disciple of Sunrise Sect, the Guardian of Sunrise Sect, Lord Lucifer of the Abyssal, the Dark Lord, King of Bradford status. Healthy goals: Control the world, rebuild the Order of Death, utility function. Banker, LVL 5, ratio, 1000 gold coins, 40 badass points, runic teleportation, X-ray vision. Also integrated with Eyes of Darkness. Wealth, 25 million gold, special trait, 5-star alchemist. Latest _AP_SODIES are on _ website. 5-star inventor subordinates. Gaia warrior, loyalty level 100%. Raylene, 5-star chef, loyalty level 99%. Arya, assassin, loyalty level 87%. Heinberg, warrior, loyalty level 48%. Maxine, warrior, loyalty level 98%. Tiberius, warrior, loyalty level 55%. Sadie, loyalty level 50%. Ricky, loyalty level 98%. Titus, loyalty level 60%. Optimus, loyalty level 60%. The Silent Reaper crew pirates, loyalty level 92%. Base of operation: Sunrise Sect, the Abyssal, the Crypt Kingdom of Bradford familiars. Nightmare. Forest Dragon, Vidora, 3-headed Hydra, elemental manipulation. Wind, 10% mastery. Fire, 10% mastery. Lightning, 15% mastery. Darkness, 25%. Michael could turn his gold coins into badass points, but the upcoming auction prevented him from doing so. According to Valric from Grandspire Bank, 20 million gold coins was just a measly amount to have when attending the auction. She also said he could buy some ordinary items with his coins if he had luck. But, for the time being, Michael wanted to hold onto his gold coins. "You also used to give me gifts every time I reach a new stage," Michael complained to the system. It had been quite some time since the system gifted him like it used to. With everything going on, Michael wanted to get his hands on some legendary gift boxes of the system. Stop asking for freebies and focus on upgrading the system. The system sounded kinda irritated by Michael's question. Michael didn't have time to argue with the system. Besides, he knew there was no point arguing with the system. Hence, Michael closed the system interface and flew in the direction of the Voldegard compound. While flying, Michael tried to contact Gaia through the earpiece. "Where are you?" Michael sighed in relief when he heard Gaia's voice. "On my way to the Voldegard compound. Is everything all right? Did you have any trouble?" "No," answered Gaia. "Things are pretty normal here, but they are preparing a lavish feast for you. Hope you're hungry." "As a matter of fact, I am. All the fighting and killing made me hungry." Michael cracked his neck, producing a cracking sound in his neck. The latest _AP_SODIES are on _ website. I am not surprised. The Reapers are becoming a headache. Have you managed to get the location of their guild? Gaia had the same thought about getting their location as Michael. I did. So let's pay them a visit then, but not as Ghost and Elia. Michael sensed a tinge of evilness and killing intent in her voice. It was apparent she wanted to destroy the Grim Reapers as Dark Lord and the Dark Queen. We'll talk more when I get there, Michael said before cutting the communication between them. Afterward, Michael just flew towards the castle without using the lightning dash. He enjoyed the dark clouds above him, drizzling, and the wind against his face. Provided him with a captivating experience. Even after almost 2 years, Michael still had goosebumps every time he flew in the sky. After almost 30 minutes of flying under drizzling weather, Michael finally reached the Voldegard castle. But unlike when he first came to the place, it looked buzzing with soldiers and clean of any blood or dead bodies. The Voldegard foot soldiers were busy fixing the broken statues and the fountains. At the same time, the female servants swept the front lawn by casting wind spells. Look, Master Ghost is back, informed Lady Eve. Master Ghost. The soldiers quickly stopped what they were doing and bowed slightly toward Michael. Not a single one failed to smile at Michael with gratitude for saving their lives. However, deep within their eyes they feared Michael. Master Ghost. Azazel walked out of the castle gracefully and greeted Michael with a bow. How is everything, Sebastian? Michael asked Azazel after gesturing at the servants to continue their work. Please, let me take care of this. Azazel waved his hand as a warm wave of energy brushed past Michael, drying all the wetness off his clothes. Cool. Michael gave Azazel a nod of appreciation before making his way into the castle. The servants and Azazel managed to light the corridor and return the castle to its former glory in a short amount of time. However, Michael wasn't in the mood for admiring the castle's beauty. Instead, his mind was occupied by something he should have done as soon as he returned from the Shadow Realm. Did Eve give me a room to stay in? Of course, Master Ghost. Azazel addressed Michael as Master Ghost instead of Lord Lucifer or my lord due to Michael's order. Azazel was to call Michael Master and Gaia and Nightmare to call Azazel Sebastian. Follow me. Azazel led the way to Michael's room in the castle. Eve gave Michael the second largest room next to Jennifer's room. Among all the 56 rooms in the castle. Where are the Voldegards? Michael asked Azazel while following him behind to his room. In the throne hall, Master Ghost. As expected, Michael said. Surviving the plague was easy, but the real battle would begin when the Voldegards tried to rebuild their house. Luckily, they had Michael to help them. However, Michael preferred Eve to be the House Lord instead of Julian. Not that Michael hated or disliked Julian, but Eve was a better candidate for leading the Voldegards in this dire time. In Michael's view, Julian was a little bit soft. What the Voldegards wanted was a ruthless leader who would be willing to do anything for the betterment of their family. As far as Michael could tell, that person was Eve. Finally, Michael arrived before his room and opened it to see a spacious room big enough to be called a hall. You're here. Gaia welcomed Michael, sitting on the queen-sized white bed. Nightmare curled into a ball on a comfy sofa facing the fireplace and enjoying the warmth coming from the fireplace. Nightmare was sleeping peacefully, so he wasn't aware of Michael entering the room. That was also the reason why Gaia didn't raise her voice. Sebastian, go for a walk around the castle and let me know if you see anything or anyone suspicious. If you face any trouble, do not hesitate to teleport back to the dark forest. As you wish, Master Ghost. Azazel bowed toward Michael and Gaia before leaving the room. Afterward, Michael took out a vial of blood from his system storage and placed it on the table in front of the opened window overlooking the city. What's this? Rather, whose blood is this? Gaia asked Michael. Sabrina's blood. Michael nonchalantly answered Michael. And why do you have this? Visit. For the best no_ing experience, I am going to check whether or not she is my sister. What the fuck? Gaia snapped as soon as she heard Michael. Just the thought of Sabrina being Michael's little sister boggled Gaia's mind. Her heartbeat rose rapidly to the point Gaia could hear her heart. But why suddenly? And what makes you think she might be your little sister? Gaia came closer to Michael, where he was setting up apparatuses and other necessary devices to do a DNA test. Typically, one would need sophisticated rituals to find out whether they were related by blood or not. But fortunately, Michael was a 5-star alchemist and an inventor with the system. So, using his knowledge at his disposal, Michael invented a device to conduct a DNA test. Gaia stared at the U-shaped contraption made of glass. The glass was split in the bottom by a metal ring, and an orb was hanging down from it. I don't know truly. Just a nagging feeling deep down that she might be my family, Michael said to Gaia while pouring Sabrina's blood into the contraption from one opening. The blood drizzled into it and stopped by the metal right. For a few moments, Gaia stood speechless, uttering no words. If she is by some chance, do you know what that means for us? Gaia's voice slightly trembled. Instead of answering her question, Michael unsheathed his sword, cut his palm, and held his hand above the contraption to fill the other half with his blood. To avoid confusion, Michael carved a small M on the half with his blood. Afterward, Michael took out a bright blue potion. The potion sparkled, almost lighting the table with its radiance. When Michael opened the vial, Gaia smelled the fragrance of lavender. Michael was still silent as he gently poured the potion into both ends and waited for the blue potion to mix with both of their blood. Now, if she is my sister, a green light will be lit in the orb. Otherwise, red. Answer my question, human. What are you planning to do after if she is your sister? Gaia asked with her brows creased together. His answer, however, completely caught Gaia off guard. To be honest, I have no plans. Michael sighed and waited for the blue potion to turn violet. What the fuck? I never heard these words from you before. First time for everything, huh? Despite the seriousness of the matter, Michael remained calm. It was true that Michael had no plans if Sabrina proved to be his sister. This would mean Noah his brother, Rowena his big sister, and Diana and Ethan were his parents. He may be cold and ruthless to his enemies, but if Noah was his brother, it wouldn't be as easy as facing Noah as an enemy like any other. After all, fighting a brother was very different than fighting an enemy. Visit. For the best known to Serenity experience. How long will it take for the orb to light up? Gaia couldn't wait to see the result. Red or green, she wanted to know whether or not Sabrina was his little sister. That would change everything from her perspective. Couple of minutes. Michael took a deep breath and waited for the orb to light up. Although it would only take a couple of minutes, each second felt like an eternity. While waiting for the orb to light up, Michael and Gaia didn't speak to each other. Instead, they waited silently until the contraption trembled slightly. Is this supposed to happen? Gaia questioned. Michael was supposed to say yes when the orb lit up in red light. As soon as Gaia saw the red light, she sighed in relief. But Michael couldn't even tell what he was feeling. His mind was boggled with mixed feelings. Michael's contraption checked the 2 blood samples' shared bond of siblings. The orb would have lit in green only if the Sky Hall hadn't put a rune on everyone in Diana's family to cut all their ties to the Dark Lord. Simply put, there were no typical means to prove Michael was related to Diana or anyone in her family. Qin Zhou made sure the Dark Lord wouldn't find out about his real family in this world. Qin Zhou believed a person's greatest power was his or her family. Thus, she wanted to cut the Dark Lord's ties to his family. No matter what, she didn't want the Dark Lord to be united with his family. It was why Qin Zhou left notes that ultimately led Eladir to create a forbidden ritual that required Diana to cut all her ties with Michael when he was a baby. If it wasn't for Wulfric, Diana's teacher and the headmaster of Amazaroth, the Sky Hall would have passed a judgment to eliminate Diana and her family as a precaution. However, convincing the Sky Hall to spare Diana and her family cost Wulfric to put them through a ritual that removed any and all biological connection between them and Michael. So unless Michael could devise a way to reverse the ritual, the contraption to test the blood wouldn't light up as green as it should be. Nonetheless, Michael was led to believe Sabrina wasn't his little sister. With this effort, Michael let go of his little desire to find his real family in this world. Look, Michael, you have a family, and they are in this room. Gaia spoke to him in a gentle voice and took a step forward. I remember my mother used to say it's not that blood makes you family but love. I love you, more than anything in this world. Gaia cupped Michael's face in her hand and stepped closer to the point her forehead touched his. Your mother is a wise woman, whom you haven't helped me find out. Gaia gestured to lighten up the mood a bit. You know Eladir is working on the way to find your mother. We must first find out why she is in hiding before finding her location. After giving up on finding his own family, Michael wanted to reunite Gaia with her mother more. At least one of them would have a mother. Michael and Gaia were still standing with their forehead touching. I am kinda relieved Sabrina wasn't your sister. It's not easy to fight against your family on a battlefield. Gaia spoke in a low-pitched voice. Visit. For a better user experience, do you mean Noah and probably Rowena? If they were your family, raising your sword against them would be hard. Trust me, I know. Gaia sighed, thinking about Zanali. True that Gaia wanted to strike Zanali down for stealing the throne that rightfully belonged to her. If she wished, Michael would definitely help her kill Zanali, except she didn't feel the fire to kill Zanali as she used to before she met Michael. Of course, that didn't mean Gaia would give the throne of Nagaland to Zanali. It's just that Gaia didn't want to kill Zanali anymore. After they take over Nagaland, Gaia would simply exile Zanali from Nagaland. If she tried to cause any trouble, she would put Zanali in the same prison Zanali put her in. At least I'm relieved now. Besides, I am giving up on finding the people who gave birth to me. So there is no point. Michael sighed with a heavy heart. I know it's hard, but it's for the better, Michael. They gave you up willingly. As far as I am concerned, they don't deserve you. Knock, knock, knock. Their conversation was abruptly cut short when someone suddenly knocked on the door. Ghost. Michael recognized the voice immediately. Come in. As Michael expected, Eve opened the door to step in. To Michael's surprise, Eve looked a bit flustered. Is everything all right? Michael asked as he and Gaia walked toward Eve to meet her in a midway. However, Eve avoided looking into his eyes, which was very unusual. With a long breath of sigh, Eve walked to the window and stared at the distant horizon. Despite the city in her sight looking gloomy with the grayish mist, the drizzling weather, and the ominous thunderclaps resonating in the distance, the city calmed her mind and soothed her soul. Visit. For the best no-underserved experience, however, she wasn't here to talk about the city. Rather, she wanted to talk about something personal. My father. Eve turned her gaze away from the city to Michael and Gaia. He told you about Filvander and my predicament to stay in the core strengthening stage until I die, didn't he? By looking at the stern look in her eyes, Michael knew there was no point in covering it up. Thus, Michael nodded before walking toward her and leaning on the wall. He did. And he also told me to stay away from you. Unlike Gaia, who was surprised, Eve just let out an exhausted smile as though Eve was tired of her father. What did you tell him? Eve asked. I told him, Eve, and I can be friends without being romantically involved. No offense to your father, Eve, but what the fuck is wrong with your father? He should show him some gratitude. Gaia growled in rage. You have all the right to be mad at my father. He's been trying to protect me, but he fails to understand that I don't need protection. Eve sighed as Michael patted her on the shoulder. We don't need to talk about that, Eve. Unless you want me to stay away from you, I'm not going anywhere. Michael didn't want to bring back hurtful memories by talking about Eve's love life. Rather, he wanted to talk about their future. I don't want you to go anywhere. Promise me you two will be my friends forever. Gaia didn't expect her to make such a request at all until she heard what Eve had said next. Visit. For a better user experience, father and my family only know that I won't be able to break through to the next stage. But the full truth is that I am sick and don't have much longer to live. Maybe a couple of years. Eve's voice stuttered. Let me guess. The elves told you this. Although the news Eve had just revealed, Michael remained calm and had a smirk on his face. System, scan Eve and tell me if something is amiss. Michael ordered the system and paid 20,000 badass points as the price. After Michael paid 20,000 badass points, the system scanned Eve's body with invisible rays that Michael's eyes could only see. Eve slightly felt a warm sensation running throughout her body. The system scan is complete. The system has found several curses in Eve's body. The current system version cannot find the origins of the curses. What's the nature of these curses? Michael wasn't surprised, as he expected the elves to put some curses on Eve's body. What Julian said about Fylvander's parents agreeing to marry their son to a human girl was too good to be true. Michael hadn't met a single elf who could be branded as good. Even Eladir had an ulterior motive to help Michael. Many novels Michael read back on Earth portrayed their elves as oppressed, weak, and enslaved by the other races. However, in this world, elves were anything but oppressed, weak, and enslaved. On the contrary, the elves were racists, powerful, and extremely power-vicious, especially the elves who were born and grew up in noble families. The curses prevent her from breaking through to the soul-refining stage, causing her to hallucinate and slowly corroding her from the molecular level. As a result, she only has a year to live if the curses aren't lifted. The current system version cannot lift the curse. The system needs to be at level 9 to lift curses. However, the system can locate an artifact that could break the curses for a price. How much? No matter how many badass points the system asks, Michael will pay it. Eve was not only his friend but also a valuable asset to have. Besides, lifting curses could always come in handy when the elves tend to curse people so much. 250,000 badass points. The system can absorb the item and turn it into a skill that would enable the host to lift even the powerful curses. As soon as Michael heard the system, his lips curved upwards. I might sound like a teenager, but this shit is dope. Michael smirked devilishly. With this skill, he could cure Christopher, Claire's grandfather. Thinking about Christopher, Michael remembered to gather information about Claire's mother and her family. According to Gaia, Claire's mother belonged to a powerful noble family in Gondolin, the capital kingdom of Ar, where the Empress resides. Gondolin was also the most powerful and prosperous kingdom in the entire Ar. Even the Dwarven kingdom couldn't hold a torch to Gondolin in terms of beauty and prosperity. Why does the host show no interest in saving Claire's mother? Surprisingly, the system questioned Michael while he was thinking about Claire's mother. Visit. For a better user experience, first, there is no rush. Second, it's the most powerful kingdom in the whole world. I need more time and resources at my disposal before visiting them. Michael answered the system and checked his status to see 320,000 badass points at his disposal. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see any downside to locating the curse-lifting artifact and turning it into a skill. Hence, Michael agreed to let the system take 250,000 and give him the item's location. The item is hidden deep within the domain of the treacherous ocean. The coincidence surprised Michael. Since Michael had 2 more weeks before returning to Mazeroth, Michael planned to go to the treacherous ocean to harvest its resources. He never thought there was an item that could give him a legendary skill. Now that the system revealed its location to be the treacherous ocean, traveling to the treacherous ocean took priority. It's settled then. Michael took a deep breath and exited the system to see Eve and Gaia staring at him. Eve! Michael smiled as he ruffled Eve's head, which caught Eve off guard. What are you doing? Eve miserably smiled. You still don't get it, do you? Eve looked bewildered, hearing Michael. As he moved closer, Michael put his hand around Eve's neck. Surprisingly, she didn't move away or swat his arms off. Michael then looked at the kingdom before them together. I can do whatever I want, Eve. You saw when I came up with a cure for the plague when the most genius minds in Ar couldn't. As a matter of fact, I challenged your father. Eve turned her gaze towards Michael as he continued. I challenged him that I will make you break through to the soul-refining stage and lead House Voldegard into a golden age. Eve was speechless, and Michael didn't give her any time to react. Instead, Michael revealed a shocking truth to her. Do you know why you can't break through to the soul-refining stage? You're cursed by the elves, Eve. Huh? Wait, what are you talking about? Eve's heartbeat began to increase as she shuddered. On the other hand, Gaia just rolled her eyes and joined them in sightseeing the gloomy city through the open window. The latest _AP_SODIES are on website. I am not surprised at all. Cursing people is one of the many things those evil sons of bitches are capable of. That's why everyone hates them. And don't even get me started on the dark elves. No, I don't believe it. Eve's eyes watered as the memories of Filvander started to flood her mind. However, Michael did not stop. Instead, Michael let Eve know about the wickedness of the elves. Things like this would undoubtedly make a person strong, and Michael wanted Eve to be stronger than ever. Only then could she become ruthless enough to lead the Voldegards and probably fight beside himself against his enemies. They cursed you because they didn't want a human girl to marry their son, Eve. They planned everything and cursed you with several curses. That's the only reason you couldn't break through to the soul-refining stage and hallucinate. Eve was utterly taken aback by the shock and surprise. On the one hand, the memories made her eyes water. On the other, she had no idea how Ghost knew about her hallucinations when she hadn't told a soul. I don't know the full story, but if he's telling you you're cursed, then you are cursed. And you're freaking lucky to have met him, Gaia declared sternly. It's shocking, I know. Take your time to process everything. But be cool. I have a way to break those curses. You will ultimately believe me when I do that and make you break through to the soul-refining stage. Michael kept patting Eve on the back to calm her down. At that time, tears had already started to gush out of her eyes. To be honest, she couldn't believe Filvander would do that to her. However, her brain told her otherwise. As Eve was staring at the distant horizon, Michael quickly bought a potion from the system, instead of brewing it himself. Here, Gaia saw a glistening white pill in Michael's hand. The pill itself radiated a sweet fragrance like no other. Take this tonight. It will stop the hallucinations and give you a good night's sleep. If anything, you need good rest. Michael lifted Eve's hand and placed the pill on her palm. Why go to all this trouble to help me? Eve couldn't help asking Michael. Although she felt like Michael was her best friend and could trust him with her life, Eve wanted to know why he was helping her. After all, Eve didn't have a clue that they were best friends once, and she died protecting the Dark Lord. No matter how many times you ask this question to me, my answer will be the same. You're my friend. To be honest, I feel like you are special. Like my gut's telling me you are my best friend. I always trusted my guts, and it never betrayed me, said Michael. For a while, the place was haunted by silence as no one uttered a word. But the silence between Michael and Eve revealed a lot more than words to Gaia. Master Ghost, Miss Elia. Suddenly a gentle voice called out for them from outside. Visit. For the best known to the experience, the feast is ready. Everyone's waiting for you in the Great Hall. The female maid softly spoke these words. Why don't we go out there and enjoy a nice meal? We deserve it, Eve. Michael said to Eve as Gaia also placed her hand on Eve's other shoulder. He wanted to take Eve's mind off of Filvander and the curses. She had a year to live, and Michael was optimistic he could go and come out of the treacherous ocean within a year. This time, he wasn't going there as a core formation cultivator but as a fusion stage cultivator with the system online, unlike the last time. Stop sulking, Eve. Let's go eat. I'm fucking hungry. You two can get me up to speed later. Since Gaia was hungry to the point her stomach started to grow, she couldn't care less about Eve's tantrum. Instead, she wanted to drag the both of them to the feast. Well, be there in a minute, Michael told the maid waiting outside and pulled Eve by her hand on the way to the door. Does Filvander know about the curses? Eve stammered, failing to believe Filvander had betrayed her. Of course, she shouldn't believe Ghost, but Eve's heart trusted Ghost more than Filvander. I don't know, but if I have to guess, I'd say yes. Michael didn't sugarcoat but told Eve what he felt. For him, it was too hard to believe a guy who truly loves a girl left her just like that because she can't break through to the next level. If he had truly loved her, he would have tried to find a way or at least spent time with her until her time came. At least that's what he would have done. Where is he now? Gaia asked Eve while opening the door. Lord Julian said he was in Mazeroth? Michael raised his one brow. Is it Eve? Asked Gaia as Eve took a few minutes of time before slowly nodding. It was evident to Michael and Gaia that Eve was deep in thought. How can she not after Michael had revealed the truth to her? As far as Michael was concerned, Eve handled the news pretty well. I heard the Filvander somewhere in Mazeroth. Anyways, until I break the curses, I won't break his bones. What are you talking about? Eve creased her brows, wiping off the tears from her face. Okay, I won't do anything to him, Michael shrugged. But Eve didn't believe him, not even for a second. Master Ghost, Miss Elia, Lady Eve. Maids standing a few meters away in the corridor greeted them. Then, the maids led the three to the great hall where Lord Julian and Ingrid had prepared a lavish feast for Michael and Gaia. Visit for a better user experience. Michael followed the maids to the feast hall. The metallic lock rattled against the door when the maids opened the dark wooden doors. He couldn't help but grin when he saw the feast just for him. The hall had several long oak tables filled with food, mainly meat and freshly baked loaves of bread. In this world, most of the grand halls had the same arrangements. Long tables with a space leading to stairs to reach the elevated platforms where the prominent figure dined in behind engraved oak tables set facing the grand hall. As soon as Michael entered the hall, the chit-chattering silenced a bit while Michael gestured at them to continue. Usually, there would be barrels of ale for everyone to treat themselves, but the ale storage was destroyed in the battle against the rock guards. Due to that, they only had fruit juice and water. Good thing they didn't have any dwarves among them. Otherwise, the short-beard bastards would have caused a riot just because there was no ale. The servants and guards in the hall were grateful to eat at all. They almost died and now had the chance to eat. Somehow the near-death experience caused them to appreciate the little things in life, even eating a loaf of bread. The cultivators in Ar didn't give much importance to eating. Instead, they revitalized their bodies with arch energy which was abundant in the atmosphere, unlike on any other continent. When Michael climbed a couple of wooden stairs leading to the oak tables, Lord Julian and Lady Ingrid welcomed him with a warm grin. Lord Julian, Lady Ingrid. Michael and Gaia nodded as Lord Julian looked a little bit uneasy, seeing Michael with Eve. After greeting the Lord and the Lady, Michael took the seat beside Lord Julian as Eve took the seat between Ingrid and Jennifer. Aside from the core Voldegard family, the three soul refiners sat on the far left side of the long table. But, of course, Michael didn't fail to greet them with a friendly smile. Mariana, Lady Ingrid clapped once, calling the blonde-haired girl with bunny ears and a bushy fox tail. The girl's silver hair shone under the glistening chandelier and the golden light emanating from the candles. Seeing the girl coming to him with a jade bottle, Michael paused her. "I'll take any fruit juice you have." "Yes, Master Ghost." The girl meekly spoke before running back to the kitchen through the door at the end of the long table. Meanwhile, Michael picked up a honey-glazed turkey leg, a vegetable salad dressed with white yogurt, and mashed tapioca using the wooden spoons and forks. Self-serving was still a new thing in this world, so when a prominent figure like Michael served himself without waiting for a maid raised a few eyebrows, including Ingrid's. The few eyebrows became many eyebrows when he served Gaia himself. The latest _AP_SODIes are on website. So, Miss Jennifer, how's Lord Hendrix doing? Michael asked Jennifer, who was still in shock at everything that had happened. Although the cure healed her body, the plague did have some effects on the mind. "The last time I heard, he went to Namladar," Jennifer replied in a small voice only loud enough for them to hear. "It's the Dwarven Kingdom," Gaia whispered into his ear. Unfortunately, Lord Information's book only contained rumors and information about Elon and Azair. So when it comes to Ar, Michael had no idea about the kingdoms, noble families in the power play, or places of interest. Dwarven King, huh? I wonder what Lord Hendrix's business with the dwarves? Michael asked while cutting the perfectly cooked flesh of the turkey. "Maybe something to do with the winter," Lord Julian said to ease the tension between him, Eve, and Ghost. Now that Michael heard Lord Julius, he remembered currently they are in the autumn and winter was just around the corner. He was too busy killing vampires and traveling to other universes to notice the season change. Despite the arch energy and cultivation, the seasons still had their effects on the world. For instance, farmlands couldn't be cultivated during the winter, and it resulted in a huge dive in restaurant businesses. It was a huge setback to Michael when he thought of opening another Hades branch in R. Surprisingly, with the exception of the southern continent, the rest shared the same seasonal cycle. Thus, if R had winter, Azer and Elon would too. "What's the plan for winter, Lord Julian?" Michael asked Lord Julian. Gaia avoided eye contact with Lord Julian because she still felt furious about what Lord Julian tried to ask Michael. From her point of view, after everything they had done, Lord Julian had the audacity to ask Michael to leave Eve after everything they had done. Visit. For the best known the experience, however, Michael didn't hold a grudge against Lord Julian. In fact, Michael understood Lord Julian and sympathized with him. If Lord Julian bore any ill against him and felt no gratitude, he would have run as soon as the fusion stage Reaper showed up. Instead of leaving Ghost behind, Lord Julian stepped in to fight with him. Michael couldn't hold any grudge against a man like him. Seeing the light smile on Ghost's face calmed Lord Julian. A few months ago, Michael wouldn't have dared to challenge a fusion stage cultivator. However, at that moment he sat beside one, and the one who feared Michael was another fusion stage cultivator. "Meeting the allies and cutting off our loses," Lord Julian sighed. Honestly speaking, Lord Julian didn't have a tiny bit of appetite. All he could ever think was Eve and how he would survive in Thera with no fusion stage protectors. Lady Ingrid wanted to talk about producing more cures but ultimately chose not to speak a word. After all, the cure solely belonged to Master Ghost, and they had no right to ask him for cures for all the citizens of Ysirius. Their first priority should be survival before taking care of Ysirius. Michael and Gaia may have taken out Rotgard, but there were still two families in Ysirius. Among the two, one was an ally, and the other remained neutral with House Voldegard. But the dynamics were sure to change as soon as the news that Voldegards have no fusion stage protectors got out. Everyone at the table had their own thoughts running in their minds. Still, they all managed to put up a smiling face for the sake of the servants and the soldiers. If they showed any weakness, the rest would surely lose morale, and it would only lead them to either deserting House Voldegard to join another or simply leave them. At this point, they couldn't afford to lose more people. "I have no right to tell you how to run your house, but getting the king's protection won't be a bad idea," Michael stated, chewing the tender flesh of the turkey in his mouth. "Oh please, Master Ghost, you literally saved us. So I grant you all the rights to speak your mind," Lord Julian replied. Just as Julian was about to continue, the girl who went to the kitchen returned with another glass bottle filled with orange juice. She poured the juice into Michael and Gaia's glass with utmost caution. "Thank you, that be enough." Michael raised his hand, telling her to stop. The girl swallowed the lump in her throat and joined the group of beastmen maids on the corner. "Visit. For a better user experience, Eve. You alright?" Lady Ingrid's motherly instincts kicked in as she placed her hand on Eve's shoulder. Eve was not as talkative as Jennifer, but seeing Eve hasn't spoken a word since she came to the table was not at all like Eve. Ingrid could see the fright in Eve's eyes as clear as day. "Nothing. Just feeling a bit tired." Ingrid saw Eve's left eye twitching a bit. It was apparent to Ingrid Eve was lying because every time Eve lied, her left eye would twitch. Ingrid chose not to question Eve more in a place surrounded by people. "Master Ghost." To Michael's surprise, Jennifer called Michael, leaning forward to see Michael more clearly. He turned his gaze towards Jennifer. "The cures. Is there any chance you will teach me how to brew it?" Not only Michael but everyone at the table was bewildered by her question. As an alchemist, she simply shouldn't have asked another alchemist to share the recipe with her. Looking at everyone's gaze falling on her, Jennifer hunched her shoulder to make her smaller a bit. Before answering Jennifer, Michael took a small sip of orange juice and smiled. "Correct me if I am wrong, but you have an intention to give the cure to everyone in Thera, right? For free?" Jennifer didn't answer Messiahel immediately, but her silence spoke a volume and answered Michael's question. "Visit. For a better user experience, I am good, but not a saint, Miss Jennifer. I did what I did only for Eve." Michael calmly spoke, showing no anger in his voice. If Jennifer had asked Gabriel or any other alchemist to reveal their recipe, they would have thrown her out. However, one couldn't blame Jennifer entirely, as she recently met a young man who taught her how to revive dead crops without asking for a single coin. Jennifer insisted the young man take something from her space ring, but he simply refused. The potion recipe the young man gave her would have fetched him millions if he sold it in a market. Every year, the farmers in Thera lost half of the crops or sometimes all the crops to a blight called black mist. Even the dark elves, who were masters of nature, couldn't do anything to avoid losing their crops to the black mist. As the name suggested, the black mist appeared in the form of a dark, gloomy mist, especially above the ripped crops waiting to be harvested. Even if the farmers were considerably richer than the farms on the other continents, they were still farmers who relied on crops. So losing half or full harvest was devastating to them. Jennifer, a disciple of Abraxia, one of the best academics for alchemists, wanted to find a solution to the black mist. In fact, she chose to find a solution to the black mist as her project despite her professors advising her against it. This was the reason for Jennifer's visit to Nagaland, where she met the young man who miraculously showed her how to get rid of the black mist. Although Jennifer had no ill feelings towards Ghost, that young man was undoubtedly more benevolent and kind than Ghost. Death of a subordinate. I am not taking a dig at privileged kids, but life wasn't easy for everyone. Michael took another sip and said casually, "Some of us had to claw our way up, Miss Jennifer. So after reaching the top, we want to have the same kindness and compassion as you. We simply lose those feelings and put a price on everything. After all, we haven't experienced any kindness or compassion," Michael said, smiling. However, Michael took a long sip and placed the empty cup on the table again. "I am not a monster either. I already made a deal with Aqua Palace. I am to distribute the cures through them starting from next week," said Michael. Next week. Jennifer creased her brows but chose not to say anything. Upon finishing the feast, the servants left the grand hall after bowing to them. They were fortunate to work for the Voldegard family. Otherwise, they wouldn't have received extra cures for their family members. After everyone left the grand hall, Michael went directly to his room and began to brew the cures in silence. On the other hand, Gaia and Nightmare sat on the bed with their eyes closed to cultivate. After all, they had to take advantage of the thick arch energy in the atmosphere. Michael placed his table facing the open window. He stared at the evening sky brewing the cure. A few hours passed in utter silence when Michael finished brewing almost 3 large crates of cures. Since there was a possibility of a Reaper coming to assassinate him, Michael remained vigilant. Before starting again to brew potions, Michael removed the broken APD and fixed it quickly. The vampire made a number to the APD while in the Shadow Realm. If he hadn't repaired the APD now, problems might arise later. Thus, Michael fixed it under the light of candles. Although they had chandeliers, Michael enjoyed the darkness. His next goal was to brew enough potions to cure 500 people. It was indeed a small number, but brewing more would take time. Fortunately, Michael had nothing to do for a week. At least that was what he thought until his vision completely turned red with the system's notifications. Warning! Subordinate Heinberg is dead. The host has lost 50,000 badass points. The latest __sodies are on the website. Michael clenched his fist when his vision was blocked by pulsating crimson-red warning boxes in front of his eyes. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. The system did not only reduce 50,000 badass points but gave him a massive headache like someone's been hitting his head with a sledgehammer. But neither the headache nor the badass points disturbed Michael. Rather, it was the notification. What the fuck? Michael furrowed his brows as he tried to contact Maxine. My lord. Where is H? Michael asked, gazing at the gloomy city under the night sky. He went to the peace talk with General Quintus. Tiberius went with them. Is something wrong, my lord? Maxine's voice turned grave. Where? Instead of giving Maxine a direct answer, Michael asked where they went to hold the peace talks. If anything, the system couldn't be wrong, and if it said Heinberg had died, then it must be true. The question was how and who killed Heinberg. But after hearing Maxine, Michael could answer his own question. In the abandoned castle in the hissing wood, Michael ignored the rhythmic clicking sounds produced by the undead harvesting the arch-energy crystals with pickaxes. "Where are you at?" Michael asked Maxine as Gaia's eyes twitched. "In the Stormville Mountain, my lord. I'll be there in a minute. Get ready to move out." Michael cut the connection without saying anything further. Afterward, Michael quickly closed the windows as well as the curtains. The room lost all the light, and the darkness took hold of the room. With a simple wave of his hand, Michael snuffed out the light from the candles and chandeliers. When the room fell pitch black, Michael's eyes glistened like rubies. "Stay here," Michael told Gaia a second before he vanished from the room. "Visit." For the best no-underserved experience, Maxine dropped the pickaxe in her hand. Feeling uncomfortable because of the graveness in the Dark Lord's voice, Maxine flicked her wrist. In the next second, a skull mask and black robes materialized in her hand. She quickly placed the mask on her face and put on the dark robes above the dusty brown tunics. A cold breeze brushed past her back as Maxine felt a terrifying yet familiar presence. Maxine didn't need to turn around to tell that the man standing behind her was the Dark Lord. But unusually, the glistening blue crystals flickered, and the dark caves became darker. There was also a coldness in the air that sent shivers through her spine. She had never felt such a presence from the Dark Lord before. Coupled with the Dark Lord's questions about Heinberg and where he went, Maxine had a sickening feeling in her gut. "No time for pleasantries. Lead me to Heinberg now," Michael said. Before Maxine could reply, Michael grabbed Maxine by her shoulder, casting the lightning dash. Michael only wanted Maxine to show him the way. He had no need for a backup, especially when one of his subordinates had died a few moments ago. This was the first time Michael lost a subordinate. Though he remained calm, Michael wanted to rip whoever killed Heinberg into shreds. It took so much effort to make each and every subordinate loyal to him. The last time Michael checked, Heinberg was on his way to becoming completely loyal to Michael. Every single subordinate was the cream of the crop, handpicked by Michael and Gaia. So losing one of them really stung Michael. Considering Michael pushed himself to the limit, his speed was to the point everything looked blurry. "I shouldn't have taken Azazel away from the surveillance room." Michael blamed himself for making such an amateur mistake. Though all his subordinates had spiders that functioned as neck cameras, they were useless without Azazel to monitor them and inform Michael that something went wrong. Since Michael took Azazel with him to there was no one to watch the feed. He would have put Vidora on the job if they didn't go into seclusion to cultivate. Such a bad time to go into seclusion. Still, Michael had no way of foreseeing the future. He knew there was no way he could have predicted Heinberg's death. After 30 minutes of flying at a speed closer to the speed of sound, Maxine stopped him. She pointed at a worn-out castle tower protruding out of the thick canopy. Michael's eyes quickly adjusted themselves to the darkness. Upon flying closer to the castle, he activated his thermal vision to see if there were any life signs inside the castle. Except for veins and roots coiling around the ruined tower, nothing occupied the castle. System, teleport Maxine back to the Stormville Mountain. The runic teleportation immediately teleported Maxine back to Stormville Mountain. Afterward, Michael slowly flew towards the broken castle. Only the tower was visible to Michael. The rest was covered entirely by the canopy. He entered the castle through the opening where a huge bell used to be. "Azazel." Michael contacted Azazel while descending towards the throne hall. "My lord," answered Azazel. "Visit. For the best known experience, return to the dark forest and tell me where Tiberius is." "As you wish, my lord." Upon landing on the once lavish throne hall, Michael saw the large roots and veins running chaotically throughout the hall. However, there was a stone table in the center that was spared by nature. With a wave of his hand, Michael conjured the alchemy flames, vanquishing the darkness with the jade light. As he got closer to the square stone table, fresh blood glistened under the jade light. Michael furrowed his brows, looking at the puddle of blood on the other side of the stone table. He squatted down beside the blood and touched it with his hand. Still warm, Michael felt the slight warmth from the blood. However, he couldn't be optimistic. The ground had absorbed most of the blood, but still, there were at least 3 liters of blood in the puddle. No way a person could survive after losing that much blood. The question in Michael's mind was whether the blood belonged to Tiberius or Heinberg. Michael stood up to investigate the scene until Azazel contacted him again. While floating around the table, Michael noticed 2 sets of footsteps on either side of the table. He closed his eyes, picturizing the scene. In his mind, he could see Tiberius and Heinberg sitting on one side of the table and 5 people on the other. According to the footsteps' depth, Michael could tell whoever it was. They all wore heavy armor. "Quintus, were you here?" Michael asked himself, slowly opening his eyes. "Why did those idiots come here alone?" Michael muttered under his breath. Apparently, the peace talk was just a facade to kill Heinberg and Tiberius. If General Quintus had Heinberg killed, he didn't want anyone to find Heinberg's body. Besides, he may have taken Tiberius too because no footsteps were leading to any of the broken windows or collapsed walls. Knowing Tiberius and his skills, it would be challenging for Quintus' men to take Tiberius alive without a fight. How did they ambush them? Michael saw no signs of footsteps in the blood puddle. So Michael looked upwards and flew towards the ceiling. To his surprise, Michael saw claw marks on the ceiling straight above the table. He looked deep to see if he could see more claw marks, but he only found 4. The pattern and distance between each claw mark told Michael that a person wearing sharp claws was sticking to the ceiling like a gecko. Michael looked down. When the time came, he dropped to the ground and probably cut Heinberg's throat. The sudden turn of events must have caught Tiberius off guard, Michael concluded. To learn how Tiberius went down, he needed more evidence, but luckily, his investigation came to an end when Azazel contacted him through the earpiece. Visit. For a better user experience, my lord, I found Lord Tiberius. He's been tortured by someone in a dark room as we speak. Meanwhile, in a dark room dimly lit with torches, Tiberius was hanging from the ceiling with his hands and legs bound by metal chains. His entire body was riddled with cuts and bruises. Heinberg's body lay on the ground beside Tiberius. His throat was slit from one end to another. Whoever killed him made sure Heinberg had no chance of healing at all. The cut's deepness was to the point they almost cleaved his head off. "Arg!" Tiberius growled as blood oozed out of the cut on his left cheek. Despite the torture, the fire of anger burned bright in Tiberius' eyes. In addition to the anger, he grinned, revealing blood-stained teeth. "You have no idea who you're dealing with here," Tiberius said, looking at the darkness. After Tiberius growled and spat the blood in his mouth, 3 figures walked out of the darkness. The man who walked forward with a devilish grin on his face was General Quintus. The armor itself consisted of broad ferrous strips fastened to internal leather straps. The strips were arranged horizontally on the body, overlapping downwards. They surrounded the torso in 2 halves, being attached at the front and back by means of brass hooks, which were joined by leather laces. Tiberius saw Quintus grin before handing over the golden Spartan helmet with dark blue plumes. He had golden hair styled to resemble the Caesar cut on Earth. The 2 soldiers behind Quintus stood almost 7 feet, wearing heavy armor from head to toe. The armor exposed not a single place in their body. After handing over the helmet to the heavily armored soldier to his right, Quintus unsheathed the bloody dagger he used to cut Tiberius. "Are you talking about the pirate captain who could use magic or the black one who controls the Senate of Maven and Giselle from the shadows?" "Both are the same, you moron," Tiberius snickered. He didn't show a single sign of fear to Quintus or the dagger, no matter how many times Quintus cut him up. Upon hearing Tiberius, Quintus didn't look surprised. As a matter of fact, Quintus knew the Black One and the pirate captain who could use magic were the same. After the Black killed Pirate Lord Vance, the news about the Black One spread throughout the continent like wildfire. At this point, there was not a single person who didn't know about the Black One. Even the three kings of the southern continent had formed a secret alliance to fight the Black One in case he tried to invade them. The alliance extended its arms to Kingdom Myril. They believed Myril might be the last Senate-ruled kingdom that was not under the control of the Black One. Normally, the three kings wouldn't meddle with the Senate-ruled kingdoms. However, after the Black One annexed the pirates, they put aside their differences to join forces. They believed their kingdoms weren't far away from being invaded by the Black One. So Myril declared war on Prerid to lure the Black One out of the shadows. Simply put, the most powerful kingdoms in the southern continent joined forces to fight the Black One. The peace talks were just a facade to take out the Black One's subordinates so the alliance could learn more about the Black One. It's a bad move to kill him. Tiberius spat yet again as Quintus moved closer to Tiberius. Why was that? Asked Quintus. He knows him more than me. He would have told you more about him. Arg. Tiberius growled as Quintus slowly ran the dagger across Tiberius' ribcage. General Quintus enjoyed inflicting pain. Seeing people suffer and cry in agony gave him a sense of pleasure that even the most beautiful women at night couldn't. To be honest, General Quintus wasn't as patriotic to Myril as everyone thought. He simply enjoyed the pain and suffering war brought on people. Visit. For the best known RNG experience. How many of you are working for this Black One? Quintus calmly asked and slowly licked the blood from the dagger. 6 or 7, Tiberius said, gritting his teeth to fight the pain. Names? Quintus asked. We don't use names, just numbers. Tiberius just lied instead of revealing the names. He wanted to buy time until the Dark Lord or the Dark Queens found him. Before Quintus and his men hung him on the chains, they ripped off his shirt and pendant and threw them into the room's dark corner. That's when Tiberius saw the pendant glimmer twice. He remembered Maxine giving Tiberius the silver pendant and telling him it might save his life someday. Tiberius believed that day might be today. Until someone comes to his rescue, Tiberius wants to stall Quintus. However, something told Tiberius that Quintus wasn't too interested in extracting information from him. Instead, Quintus focused on torturing Tiberius. Then let me enlighten you. Maxine, Corey, Gibson, Shorty, and Senator Caius, Quintus surprised Tiberius. Your employer shouldn't trust the pirates. A couple of girls and a mug of ale. Those filthy pirates started to sing everything they knew about the Black One, said Quintus, ridiculing the pirates in the process. Not everything, Tiberius snickered. He's not called the Black One. That's just how he dresses. As he talked, Tiberius saw a glimmer behind Quintus once again. Seeing the glimmer, Tiberius sighed in relief. The two armored guards and Quintus might be deadly warriors, but they were nothing in front of the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen. Either of them could kill Quintus and his guards with a single spell. Tiberius started to roll his eyes around as though he was searching for the assassin who jumped on them at the abandoned castle. Despite Tiberius and Henneber being highly trained warriors, the assassin slit Heinberg's throat and knocked out Tiberius in a blink of an eye. Visit. For a better user experience, then what do you call him? Quintus asked somewhat, looking amused by Tiberius' answers. The Dark Lord. Tiberius snarled and waited for Quintus to cut him again. However, Quintus surprised Tiberius by turning around and leaving the room. After Quintus left the room, the two heavily armored soldiers gawked at Tiberius. Growling. HRRGHH. The two soldiers growled at Michael like they were some kind of beasts. Tiberius even saw a puff of smoke coming through the two holes in their helmets. Tiberius yanked the chains, seeing the two slowly stepping towards him. This is a good time for you to show up, Dark Lord. Tiberius kept tanking the chains as the two monstrous soldiers approached him. The torches flickered just as they were about to grab Tiberius' head. The soldiers halted their steps to look around the torches flickering. Suddenly, the dim light radiated by the torches got completely snuffed out. As a result, the room completely fell into darkness. Growling, one soldier roared as Tiberius heard the sound of metal clanking. A few moments later, the soldier lit a matchstick to see what was happening around them. But as soon as he lit the matchstick, Tiberius saw the Dark Lord standing behind the two soldiers. Grrrr. The matchstick quickly lost its flame as the room became dark once again. Pulch. Visit. For a better user experience, Tiberius couldn't see anything, but heard muffled ground followed by heavy thuds, as though something heavy fell onto the ground. Afterward, Tiberius didn't hear a single sound. He yanked his chains in the darkness. A few moments later, the torches slowly started to burn again, lighting the room with dim orange light. As expected, Tiberius saw the Dark Lord standing before him between the two dead bodies. The two monstrous soldiers' legs were still twitching. Still, there was no way they could survive because Tiberius saw no heads attached to their shoulders. Heinberg. Before cutting Tiberius down, Michael turned his gaze to Heinberg's body. When Michael first wanted to turn Heinberg into his subordinate, the system didn't let him. The system said Michael couldn't force someone to be his subordinate. Still, Michael made Heinberg work for him using fear. It almost took Michael 4 months to raise Henneber's loyalty to the point the system accepted him as a subordinate. But all those efforts and future plans for Henneber went into the drain. Michael squatted beside Heinberg, conjuring an orb of jade flames to see Heinberg's face. His eyes were still open and contained a tinge of shock. Rest in peace. Michael closed his eyes before looking at the long cut across his throat. Unlike a loyal subordinate, he could earn 50,000 badass points in a snap. So whoever killed Heinberg just signed their death warrant. Looking at Heinberg's body, he could only sigh. Even the system had no power to bring death back to life at its current level. Dark Lord. Tiberius yanked the chains again as Michael stood up. With a single flick of his wrist, Michael sent a wind blade to cut through the chain. Thud. Tiberius fell to the ground and growled in pain. Upon seeing the cuts and wounds on Tiberius' body, Michael then threw a healing potion toward him. He could tell General Quintus took his sweet time gutting Tiberius like a pig. So Michael wondered how Knuts would feel to be at Tiberius' place for a change. Take his body and follow me, Michael ordered Tiberius, who quickly emptied the healing potion into his mouth. The healing potion closed all the cuts in Tiberius' body. Tiberius immediately felt refreshed and revitalized. So he slowly stood up and walked to Heinberg's body. Michael was about to reach the door when he halted his steps. He then turned around to see Tiberius following him, carrying Heinberg's body in his arms. Visit. For a better user experience, was it General Quintus? Michael asked in his demonic voice, which sounded colder than usual. He tortured me, but he didn't kill Heinberg. It was someone else. At this point, Michael accessed the feed recorded by Tiberius Necklace Spider and watched everything. The assassin who killed Tiberius possessed inhuman speed. He was either a highly trained assassin to even match Michael's skills or enhanced by some means. Otherwise, he couldn't have killed Heinberg and knocked out Tiberius in a blink of an eye. He was simply too fast. Wait for me, Michael said before willing the system to teleport Tiberius to the dark forest. Afterward, Michael opened the door to see where they were. If he had any luck, he might meet General Quintus. But it was doubtful since Michael sensed no one around him. Many noble families, as well as royal families, expressed their discontent. The commoners blamed the Guardians for not letting the world know about the vampires. Not that anyone could stop the vampires, but they all hated to be the blind side. Visit. For a better user experience due to these reasons, the higher-ups in the Guardian Guild chose to hand over handling the Dark Lord to House Helrid. Not that the Guardians had any choice in the matter. Unless they wanted a full-on war with the Sea Folks, they had to give up the case to Mutrad. Go on, Mutrad said while looking at the paper clippings and the pictures on the whiteboard. He didn't bother to turn around because, as far as Mutrad was concerned, the Guardians were lazy, corrupted morons who couldn't do their job correctly. Tell me your names, cultivation level, and the target assigned to you by Peyton. Mutrad stood there with his hands folded. I am Cassandra Perito. I recently reached core formation level 6. and my targets were Marco and Filippo. Both are rogue cultivators, said the blonde. Following the blonde, the red-haired young man began to introduce himself to Mutrad. I am Tomas Bell, core formation level 9. I got Hudson, Lucas, and Calypso as my targets. Hudson is a disciple of Golden Valley. Lucas and Calypso are rogue cultivators. Mutrad rubbed his chin as the last one stepped forward. Name is Lado Sikanava, core formation level 8. Rogue cultivators Vladimir and Petro were my targets. After the three introduced themselves, Mutrad turned around. For a moment, Mutrad stared curiously at the three of them. Do any of you know where Connors is? Asked Mutrad, although he knew the answer to his question. No answer, Mutrad asked, looking at the three staring at each other, expecting the other to say something. Do you know who his target was? Mutrad asked, tilting his head. Considering the three of them were told to give their full cooperation to Mutrad whether they liked it or not, the girl didn't hide what she knew. She and Connors used to date at the time when Peyton put together a team for the Operation New Dawn. Although she and Connors broke up due to some differences, he revealed his targets to her. The latest _AP_SODIes are on website. Ghost. To their surprise, Mutrad grinned upon hearing Cassandra. He slowly walked towards the trio and looked them in their eyes. Connors is dead, said Mutrad nonchalantly. Cassandra looked at the smiling Mutrad. When she locked eyes with him, she averted her gaze. She was afraid her relationship with Connors might be a hurdle to her rise in the Guardian Guild. Connors' death didn't affect her as much as the thought of being stuck at the bottom without any promotions. The eyes of the three were on Mutrad to see what he was about to tell next. Instead, Mutrad turned around. Ghost. Mutrad placed Michael's picture beside Gaia's. Afterward, Mutrad snapped his finger, taking a quill from his space ring. He started to put a cross on every one of their targets except Michael and Gaia. The trio had questions about why Mutrad crossed off the others but chose not to until he turned around again. When he did, Cassandra was the first one to raise a question. Lord Mutrad, why did you cross them off the board? Asked Cassandra. They are dead, Mutrad simply said like it was a simple thing. Some of the targets were soul refiners. Still, Mutrad said they are dead. The trio wondered what could have killed them. However, soon they received a shocking answer from Mutrad. Someone put a bounty on their heads. As a result, they were hunted down. Except these two, Mutrad pointed at Gaia and Ghost. I have another suspect who could be the Dark Lord or related to him. Mutrad stunned everyone by sticking Noah's picture on the board. Noah Winston? The trio was stunned. Noah was the rising star of the Guardian Guild. Not only that, but he was also the youngest to sit on the Guardian Captain's chair. Saying Noah was an assailant to the Dark Lord or worse, saying he was the Dark Lord, was nothing short of blasphemy. Mutrad had no right to accuse Noah of such a heinous crime. What do you know about Ghost before he comes to the river town? Nothing. He just appeared one day, right? Mutrad asked as his gaze swept across them. Visit. For a better user experience, the Dark Lord appears exactly 5 months after he arrived, Mutrad said. A month later, Jane Totonk had a quarrel with him, and 2 weeks later, she was killed and hanged from her own home. At the same time, there were also several victims, but they all died within Elon, especially within a day of flying distance from Rivertown. According to my sources, he went from a body refining stage cultivator to a fusion stage cultivator in just 19 months. Not even humankind's best of the bests have such monstrous cultivation speed. That's just the fact one. Mutrad began to walk left and right with his hands behind his back. Second fact. Connors went missing when he was tasked to deal with a senator in the southern continent. At the same time, a pirate captain dressed in black who could wield magic inside the void line appeared. Connor was last seen when he visited Senator Vibius. Coincidentally, Senator Vibius left the kingdom at the same time Connors went missing. The three of them heard rumors about someone who could use arch-energy within the void line. At first, they thought it was just a ruse, but after hearing from Mutrad, they didn't think it was. Nonetheless, the piece of news startled them. Mutrad had all the resources of House of Halrid at his disposal, along with the Guardian's records. Using both, it wasn't tough to find everything about Connor. Although Peyton was on the right track to find the Dark Lord, she didn't have the resources or authority like Mutrad to filter the suspect list effectively. But Lord Mutrad, Ghost, was in the Nether Realm when Jane was killed? He even took the truth pill and proved his innocence. Leto raised his thought. He didn't kill doesn't mean he was innocent. In the southern continent, the Black One is seen with a woman. And guess what? Ghost also has a fiancé who didn't go to the Nether Realm. She must have sneaked into Totonk Manor and killed her, Mutrad explained. So you're saying Ghost is the Dark Lord? Cassandra asked. Yes, said Mutrad. Then what about Noah? Asked Tomas. There is a little chance Noah might be the Dark Lord. However, I am certain this guy has some sort of connection with the Dark Lord, Mutrad said. Although Mutrad didn't have enough facts to connect Noah to the Dark Lord, his gut feeling said Noah was somehow related to the Dark Lord. Now all he needed was to follow Ghost and prove him guilty. But he wasn't going to chase down the Dark Lord as Tanulia did. The Dark Lord might be the trinkets criminal Mutrad had chased because all Mutrad had was theories, not evidence. Without solid evidence, he wouldn't be able to deploy all the resources at his disposal. A small mistake could result in a calamity for the Arctic Hall. Unlike the Guardians, the higher-ups of the House of Halrid warned everyone about the Dark Lord and the threat he posed to the entire world. As a result, Mutrad was strictly ordered to investigate with utmost caution. I chose to share everything because of the same reason why Peyton chose you in the first. You three are the most power-hungry humans in the guild. You want to prove you're worth something. From now on, you three will work directly for me. As your reward for working for me, you will be placed directly under the Alpha Guardian of your choice, surpassing the position of Guardian Captain. The offer was beyond their expectation. Their eyes glistened, sparkling with excitement. Each of them would have done anything if Mutrad offered them a position of Guardian Captain, let alone a position under the Alpha Guardian of their choice. Being placed directly under an Alpha Guardian meant one thing: they could become the next Alpha Guardian one day. My sword is yours, Lord Mutrad. Cassandra was the first one to kneel down with her hands on her chest. Currently, Cassandra was tasked to monitor the nobles in Azair, which she considered a waste of time. She spent most of her time following nobles, watching them drink, harass people, and commit all sorts of heinous crimes. Guardian Captain Gerard gave her some of the worst tasks in the guild instead of tasks that could solidify her chance to become a Guardian Captain. Since Cassandra wasn't from a prominent noble family, she had to put up with Guardian Captain with the hope that someday her luck would turn. After hearing Mutrad, she had a feeling this was her way to get to the top of the hierarchy. Moreover, this wasn't an off-the-books operation. Therefore, each of them must be given some sort of reward. And a man like Mutrad didn't have a need to give them a fake promise. It'll be an honor to work for you, Lord Mutrad. Leto dropped to one knee and lowered his head like a loyal soldier. If someone made a list of the most racist people in the Guardian Guild, Leto would be in the top 10. He literally killed countless beast men just because they weren't humans. His family was one of the biggest slave traders in Azair. Yet his racism went out of the window before a golden opportunity presented by Mutrad. He bent his knee to Mutrad, a sea folk, without a second of hesitation. The latest _AP_SODIES are on website. Unlike Cassandra, Leto didn't hate the task given to him by Gerard. On the contrary, he loved his task of destroying goblin nests throughout Elon. Since his family was in the slavery business, he captured all the goblins along with any other non-human races and sold them to nobles for a hefty price. The weak goblins were the perfect replacement for dummies to test spells and attacks. In fact, many nobles preferred live targets such as goblins and weak beast men over dummies. His family supplied thousands of goblins and beast men every year. Of course, the Guardians knew about this but didn't care less about the goblins or the beast men. If Leto could become the next Alpha Guardian or even a Guardian Captain, He could use the connection and authority to send several teams just to capture non-humans. In other words, he could treat the Guardians like adventurers. The only difference was Leto wouldn't have to pay the Guardians. I am yours to command, Lord Mutrad. Finally, Tomas knelt down with his hand on his chest, like Cassandra. If Leto's family profited by trading in slaves, Tomas' family was in the business of mining and real estate. Even as a low-level guardian, Tomas used his status to force hundreds of commoners out of their lands. If a commoner decided to file a complaint against him or his family, they would simply disappear. Toman's family owned at least one mine in every kingdom in Azer. Suppose Toman became a guardian captain, his family would own almost all the mines. They would be also able to expand their business to Elon at that time finally. Putting the three of them to catch the Dark Lord was ironic. The three of them committed more crimes than the Dark Lord ever did. Good, Mutrad nodded. He knew the history of every single of them. To be honest, he couldn't care less who they were and what they did. Instead, all he cared about was catching the Dark Lord and killing him once and for all. Rise, Mutrad said. He then turned around to look at the ghost's portrait on the whiteboard. The Guardians should have given Peyton more resources and protection. She almost cracked the case. Mutrad admired Peyton. He almost felt pity for Peyton. Given more time, resources, and protection, Mutrad had no doubt she would have proved Ghost as the Dark Lord. If she weren't getting close to the Dark Lord, he would have let the Guardians continue their goose chase. But instead, he went to such lengths and took risks to kill Peyton and destroy Tenulia's warship, calmly said Mutrad. Just to be safe and create a controlled environment for his investigation, Mutrad hired Reapers to kill everyone on the suspect list. The Reapers killed everyone except one, Ghost. Now that Mutrad picked Ghost as his target, he would dissect everything about Ghost. Several moments later, Mutrad turned around and issued his first orders to each of them. Visit. For the best known to serve the experience, Cassandra, the Sunrise sect is hiring teachers. Get the job. Mutrad handed over a golden parchment to Cassandra. He then turned his gaze to Leto. Get your family to become one of Ghost's biggest customers of Majestic. When the time comes, represent your family and meet him. As you wish, my lord, Leto bowed. Tomas? Mutrad looked at Tomas. You're to leave for the southern continent and establish yourself as a pirate under Pirate Lord Corey. Take this. With a flick of his wrist, Mutrad took out another golden parchment from his space ring before handing it over to Tomans. The latter opened it to see the map of Giselle and a cross. You will meet my contact there. He will give you all the necessary tools to survive. After issuing orders to them, Mutrad gazed at them. If you have any issue, you can back out now. As Mutrad expected, none of them dared to open their mouths. Visit. For a better user experience, remember, under no circumstances you're to approach Ghost or the Black One in the southern continent. The last time Guardians underestimated him, he played you for a fool, destroyed your headquarters, and killed one of your best. Unlike Tenulia, Mutrad didn't dare to underestimate Ghost. Until Mutrad was sure Ghost had no way to escape, he wouldn't make a move against him. There were still too many things he didn't know about Ghost. In fact, none of the Guardians had any idea what he was capable of. Without knowing every aspect of his power, he wouldn't be able to catch the Dark Lord. Moreover, if a single word of what I said went out, I will wipe you and your family out of this world. Trust me when I say this, I don't make threats. I make promises. Mutrad's voice became colder to the point the three of them felt shivers running through their spines. His eyes glimmered as they could see the murderous intent in Mutrad's eyes. Because Elon and Azer were still affected by Hydra's cry, no one was able to see Mutrad's cultivation level. They would be startled by his fusion stage level 10 cultivation if they could. We wouldn't dare, Lord Mutrad, Cassandra sternly said. Now leave. Make sure no one follows you, Mutrad said and waved his hand as the whiteboard disappeared from the hall. Afterward, Mutrad left the manor before the three. The skinless creatures roared, jumping up and down vigorously in anger. On the other hand, the vampires began to float. This chapter upload first at Novelbin. Net if you want to read more chapters, please visit Novelnext. Calm to experience faster update speed looking at the vampires approaching him. He slowly removed the dark hood covering his face. If Michael were here, he would be surprised or even startled to see him. He was none other than Michael's fellow Earthling, Hunter Blade. He was dealing with a group of traitors when the Shadow Realm sucked him from his castle. Considering Hunter had visited the Shadow Realm couple of times, the Shadow Realm didn't shock him much. Everything looked familiar to Hunter, even the vampires. Upon seeing the vampires, Hunter grinned. He had no fear whatsoever of the vampires. In fact, he looked amused to see the vampires approaching him, knowing nothing about the extent of his powers. This version of the Hunter visited the Shadow Realm once, so he was familiar with the setting and everything. The only question Hunter had was where he would go from the Shadow Realm this time. The last time he visited the Shadow Realm to harvest experience points, Don's universe sucked him in, and he almost wiped out Don's enemies for him. True vampires. Hunter devilishly grinned at the vampires. In his universe, he came across the vampires a couple of times. In his world, he called these vampires true vampires because they were pure breeds. They were born and grew up in the Queen's world before coming to the Shadow Realm. Is that Queen bitch still around? Hunter asked, folding his arms. He pretended to search for the Queen. Grrrrrrrrhhh. The vampires roared after they heard Hunter. Although they lacked the ability to communicate in the Shadow Realm, they could understand any language. Hence, they knew what Hunter had just said. Hearing him disrespect their queen made their blood boil. They didn't even try to gauge Hunter's power in their anger. Instead, they blindly dashed at him in the air. Stupid as always, Hunter snickered. Then, while the three true vampires were dashing at him, Hunter calmly flicked his wrist as a whip made of pure red energy materialized in his hand. Whoosh! Hunter just waved the whip in a circular shape, cleaving all their heads in a blink of an eye. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a level 85 Sentinel Stage True Vampire. The reward is 750,000 experience points and 10,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a level 86 Sentinel Stage True Vampire. The reward is 800,000 experience points and 20,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a level 87 Sentinel Stage True Vampire. The reward is 850,000 experience points and 40,000 badass points. So weak. Hunter disappointedly shook his head. The number of experience points he received was so underwhelming. But again, Hunter didn't expect too much from the weaklings. Congratulations to the host for killing a level 86 Sentinel Stage True Vampire. The reward is 800,000 experience points and 20,000 badass points. Hunter ignored the system notifications ringing in his head. Instead, he looked down on the army of skinless creatures crawling out of their holes. Let's have some fun, Hunter smirked as the scythe disappeared from his hand. Upon seeing the skinless creatures roaring and growling at him, Hunter simply snapped. Although it was a simple snap, the entire dungeon trembled violently. Afterward, a bright light appeared in the sky directly above them. The skinless creatures closed their eyes due to its brightness, but soon, what started as an orb of light grew big enough to make Hunter look puny near it. In a blink of an eye, Hunter created a meteor to drop it on the skinless creatures. At this point, I just feel pity for them, Hunter devilishly grinned, contrary to his words. The next moment, he snapped again as the meteor soared through the air and landed in the middle, creating a massive mushroom cloud. The impact could be compared to a mini nuclear bomb. The system has completed its task. When the host is ready, the system can teleport the host out of the Shadow Realm. I am ready. Hunter didn't even bother to stay in the Shadow Realm to see the skinless creatures burnt to ashes. Instead, he wanted to get out of here to see where he would go next. It would be nice to see Ghost again. Hunter smirked as a bright light enveloped him. Chapter 608. Hunter and Ghost meet again after the meteor hit the dungeon. Everything within a 15-meter radius burnt to the crisp. Even the walls that stood the test against time for thousands of years crumbled down in a few moments. Seeing the huge crater on the ground, Hunter smiled with satisfaction. The light shrouded him for a couple of moments before fading away from the shadow realm along with Hunter. When the bright light covering his vision disappeared, Hunter was hovering in the sky above a forest stretched far to the horizon. The storm clouds grew darker by the second, indicating the approaching storm. The ominous sound of thunderclaps and the howling wind pushed Hunter to find shelter before the storm. Hunter looked around to locate any villages or cities. Yet there was nothing but green forest as far as he could see. Warning! Warning! One of the Queen's generals has woken up by your presence. Utmost caution required. Hunter creased his brows. The last time Hunter fought a general, they destroyed an entire pocket dimension. He also entered a coma state because the general damaged his soul and body a little bit too much. He would have died that day if it wasn't for the system. Although he killed the general at the end of the day, Hunter didn't want to go through a battle such as that again in a different universe where the energy rules may differ from his. Can you sense how powerful this general is? Hunter asked. You have a 50% chance to defeat if you use all your powers, the system said. Unlike Michael's system, which still had a tinge of mechanical sound, Hunter's system sounded completely like a serious woman. That means I have a 50% chance to die. Fuck that. It's a problem for the people who live here, Hunter said. He was a man who wouldn't do anything unless he could get something in return. He was building a criminal empire based on the sole principle. Fighting a general would not only give him nothing but also endanger his life. Besides, Hunter knew if he started a fight with a general, most probably every single powerhouse in this universe would arrive at the scene. At that time, his secret of being another worlder might be exposed. So you're going to ignore the badass points and experience you would get by slaying the general? The system asked, almost sounding mad at Hunter for being overly cautious. Yes, Hunter simply said. He valued his life more than the badass and experience points. After all, no amount of points would save him if the general killed him. Afterward, Hunter picked a random direction and flew in that direction. Hunter was flying in peace when his body trembled due to the sudden thunderous roar that resonated in the area. If you're lucky, you guys might have a day or two before the general leaves its tomb, said Hunter. For a few moments, Michael remained silent, thinking of a way to deal with the Hydra. He might be at the fusion stage, but according to the system, he had no chance against it until he reached the half-immortal stage. Luckily, with the skill Michael bought in the Shadow Realm to convert the cultivation stages to match the cultivation stage in his world, he was able to tell Hunter was stronger than a half-immortal. If I could use Hunter to deal with the Hydra, I might survive this without destroying this world, Michael thought to himself. Ghost. Suddenly, Michael heard the voice of Cain. The last time Michael heard from Azazel, he said Vidora was in seclusion. It seemed like they had to come out because of the Hydra's shout. Give me a sec, Michael said to Hunter and flew a couple of meters away from Hunter. The Hydra. It's calling us. What do you mean calling you? Michael furrowed his brows. He wants us to meet him. Otherwise, he's saying he will destroy this world. We have 6 hours to meet him in the Stormville Mountain, said Cain. What do we do? Ag asked Michael. This chapter upload first at Novelbin. Net, if you want to read more chapters, please visit Novelnext. Com to experience faster update speed. We have no choice, said Michael. If the Hydra comes out of Stormville Mountain, it would definitely destroy the world Michael has been trying to control. He had put so much effort just to let a Hydra destroy it. Although he could just stand by and watch the Hydra destroy everything, including his enemies, there wouldn't be much left of the world after it was done. Besides, it would most certainly enslave him or just kill him. Therefore, Michael chose to go meet the Hydra instead of waiting for it to kill him. He wouldn't have come to this conclusion so quickly if it wasn't for Hunter. It'll be there in a few minutes. Get ready to meet the Hydra, Michael said. Then he turned around to see Hunter. I assume you have a plan to stop the general, asked Hunter. Might be. Seeing Ghost dragging his words, Hunter knew his plan must have something to do with him. But you need my help. Am I right? Hunter sighed. It was Michael's bad luck that he had to ask for Hunter's help. But again, it was no one's fault that the Shadow Realm teleported Hunter to his universe, which caused the Hydra to wake up. If Michael had to blame someone, he should blame the Queen for creating such an abomination and putting it in his universe. Remember, you can't leave this universe until you complete the task given to you by the Shadow Realm. Hunter system chose to come out of its offline status for a moment to instruct Hunter. Also, if the general wanted you dead, it would have started a battle as soon as you entered this universe. So quit being a pussy and be a badass, says the one who went offline. Hunter ridiculed the system but received no response from it. On his way to the center, Hunter noticed several mining tools, footsteps as well as a few glowing crystals glowing from the walls. He could sense weird energy pulsating from the crystals, but he couldn't identify them. Of course, Hunter would have paid the system to learn about the crystals' origins if the system hadn't gone offline. For now, Hunter guessed these energy crystals may have contained the energy of this world. Luckily for them, the glowing blue crystals lit their path. After walking for several minutes, Hunter stepped into a spacious hall where he saw a huge red cross on a wall at the hall's end. Additionally, the words "Do not come near" were engraved onto the stone wall. He knows we are here, Hunter saw the gray head in the middle declare. You could talk to a general? Hunter asked in surprise. Not to any general but a Hydra, Michael answered instead of Vidora. So you named them after King Ghidorah, huh? Hunter smirked. As a fellow Earthling, the name Vidora sounded familiar to Hunter. I heard you named your dog Dogzilla? Michael chuckled, just to lighten the mood a bit while walking towards the cross. Hunter was about to ask Michael something when Michael placed his hand on the wall before them. Afterward, he plunged his head into the wall, slowly sliding the wall open to reveal a crack behind. As soon as Hunter saw the crack, he felt a hot gush of air, forcing him to take a few steps back. Moreover, Hunter heard a loud breathing sound. This is it. Michael took a deep breath. For a few moments, his mind went black. He wondered what might be the reason for the Hydra to summon them here. Besides, Michael hated the connection between Vidora and the Hydra. If the Hydra could communicate with Vidora anytime, it might mess up with Vidora one day. After all, Vidora was still little and weak compared to the Hydra. Hunter, on the other hand, focused more on his well-being rather than on anyone else's. As far as he was concerned, all he wanted was to get out here alive and return to his world. As Ghost squeezed through the crack, Hunter thought about destroying the Shadow Realm once and for all. No Shadow Realm, no sucking him into another universe. HRRRRMMMM. Hunter heard a rhythmic growling coming from the other side. They all felt like they had entered into a storm, but after they stepped out of the crack, everything became dead silent. Hunter and Michael walked to the edge and stared into the abyss below. Without their control, their heartbeat rapidly increased. As far as they could see, there was nothing but darkness below. Suddenly, they saw 4 pairs of crimson-red glow in the darkness. Michael and Hunter almost jumped back in shock. They tried to take a step back from the edge. Except when they were about to, an invisible force pushed them into the abyss from behind. Fuck! Ig screamed as loud as she could. They continued to fall deeper and deeper. Still, he hadn't seen the full form of the Hydra, but what he saw was enough to make his legs tremble. On the other hand, Vidora was speechless, just like Hunter. The Hydra was beyond any cultivation stages. To be honest, Hunter didn't think they could take on the Hydra even with their cultivation power. If the Hydra wanted, it could crush them with its toe. Now Michael realized how a single Hydra could make an entire continent void of any arch energy. Without any spell or energy attack, the Hydra could destroy cities just by walking through them. Swallowing the fear in his heart, Michael tried to gauge Hydra's cultivation stage. Yet no matter how hard he tried, he simply couldn't. How could he sense the Hydra's power when the Hydra was beyond any cultivation stages in Michael's universe? It took a moment for him to realize the Hydra didn't belong to this world or his universe. What? Michael tried to talk, but no words came out of his mouth, so he cleared his throat before speaking again. For the first time in his life, a lump formed in his throat due to overwhelming fear. "My lord, what do you want with us?" Michael addressed the Hydra as my lord. He didn't dare to show any signs of disrespect towards something that could end his life within a snap of time. "I am called Mugashiku, one of the great generals of the Queen of All." As the Hydra said, Michael and Hunter saw countless thick red lightning bolts crackling around the Hydra, lightening the abyss for a moment. The lightning bolts were bright to the point Hunter and Michael had to close their eyes. As a result, they failed to see the complete form of the Hydra. Chapter 610. A deal with the devil. Your kind has persisted so much. Famine, wars, and even the test of time. The Hydra calmly spoke in its growling voice. However, this voice seemed slightly different than the voice before. Since Michael knew Vidora and how each head had its own voice and personality, Michael could tell the voice changed because of the different heads. There were 8 crimson-red eyes, which meant unlike Vidora, who had 3 heads, Mugashiku had 4 heads. "Do you know why human?" Mugashiku asked Michael and Hunter. They both felt like the Hydra's been looking at them. "No," Hunter doubtfully said. "Because your kind adapts. You know where to bow your heads and where to raise your hand." Another slightly soft voice compared to the first 2 voices. "What do you want?" Ayag raised her voice despite standing in front of a being like Mugashiku. Unlike the rest, Ayag wasn't afraid of the Hydra. But as soon as she raised her voice, Michael and Hunter wanted to grab her and shut her mouth close. Ha ha ha! To their surprise, the Hydra burst into laughter, which gave Michael and Hunter a heart attack. They dropped to the ground, curled into a ball, and twitched. Hunter and Michael desperately called out their systems to teleport away or a way to escape the abyss. "Stop!" Ayag suddenly shouted, destroying the laugh's power completely. Finally, Hunter and Michael were able to breathe. Breathing heavily, Michael and Hunter picked themselves to their feet. "This is the reason my kind was wiped out from our universe. We are not adaptive. We raise our claws at the wrong being," Mugashiku said to Vidora. "Wiped out?" Ayag's heart skipped a beat. Although she had never said a word, Ayag missed being with her own king. Not that Ayag didn't like the life she had with Nightmare, Gaia, and Ghost, but she wanted to meet other Hydras and visit her homeworld at least once. However, after hearing the painful voice of Mugashiku, her hope trembled. "You and I are the last ones of our kind, and if your human doesn't do what I ask him to do, I will be the last one of my kind." Mugashiku's voice completely took a dark turn. The threatening voice of the Hydra literally made their bodies tense. Following the sinister words, a hot stream of breath brushed past Michael and Hunter. "What do you want?" Ayag asked yet again. But instead of answering her question, the Hydra slightly moved its claw as a bright light shot out from above and landed on Vidora. As soon as Michael saw the light, he tried to move away, yet he failed because the light was too fast. When the bright white light disappeared, Michael and Hunter noticed a glowing rune on each head. "What did you do?" So many questions. Another hot air brushed past Michael and Hunter, almost burning their clothes. After all, he could always get stronger with the system. One day, he might return to this world and rip the Hydra's heads off one by one just because he felt like it. But for now, Hunter remained silent without provoking the Hydra, just like Michael. "Tell us about our homeworld?" Sarba mustered his courage to question the Hydra. "Leave!" Instead of an answer, all they got was a thunderous roar from the Hydra. This voice sounded more demonic, evil, and terrifying than all the voices before. "The 4th head," Michael muttered. This chapter upload first at Novelbin. Net. If you want to read more chapters, please visit Novel Next. calm to experience faster update speed as the roar reverberated in the abyss. They were sucked upwards by an invisible force. Michael held onto Vidora tight, flinging higher and higher. When they reached the top, they regained their cultivation power. Phew! That's terrifying. Hunter let out a heavy breath of a sigh. In his whole life, he had never seen such terrifying creature, and he had seen a whole lot of scary creatures and killed most of them back on his world. Now that it took my ring, I think the Shadow Realm will suck me out of here soon, Hunter said, almost sounding a bit disappointed. To be honest, Hunter would have liked to stay in this whole new world for a few more days. He wanted to see if he could get something valuable from this world and bring it to his. Before you leave, can you do me a favor, Hunter? Michael asked. A few moments ago when Mugashiku took Hunter's ring, Michael had thought. Since Hunter belonged to a whole new universe and the chances of him returning to this universe were pretty slim, Michael wanted to do something that could help him against the sea folks who were apparently hunting him now with the Guardians. To this moment, Michael had no idea that Mutrad marked him as the Dark Lord and started to hunt him in the shadows. However, if Michael's plan with Hunter worked, not only it would ensure his safety, but it would also prevent anyone from suspecting him of being the Dark Lord. What's in it for me? Hunter asked. Although Ghost and he was from the same place, it wasn't Hunter's style to do something for free. After all, if Michael's universe was bad, Hunter's was the worst. How about this? With a flick of his wrist, Michael took out the black metal card with a golden lion head engraved on it that Hunter gave him when he traveled to Hunter's universe first. According to the Hunter Michael met, the card would enable Hunter to visit Michael's world if a general of the Queen broke out to destroy their world and vice versa. My calling card. Hunter remembered he gave this card to Ghost a couple of years ago. What about it? Hunter asked, looking at his calling card. I will find the Hydra asked of me, so I am not in an imminent threat. But you are. Chapter 611. Overpowered Hunter hearing Ghost. Hunter was shocked. He didn't get the full meaning of Ghost's words. Fortunately, Michael explained his plan in detail. A while later, Michael and Hunter reached the outskirts of Royal Land using a teleportation scroll Michael bought from the system store. Since Hunter could disappear at any moment, Michael didn't dare to waste any time. This armor feels weird, Hunter said, wearing Michael's Lucifer armor. Although Michael asked Hunter to wear his armor, the latter chose not to ask any questions. Instead, Hunter just hovered in the air, looking at the golden church on the horizon. Michael stared at Hunter for a few moments. The armor looked menacing and terrifying. If any weak-willed men saw the armor suddenly, there was a high possibility of them getting heart attacks. Looking at the armor's design, Hunter quickly got some ideas to enhance his own armor back in his world. Whatever you want me to do, we must do it quickly. I can feel the Shadow Realm's pull getting stronger. Hunter's voice was grave. Hit me with enough force to send me crashing onto the church. Michael cracked his neck, preparing to get hit by Hunter. With the energy radiation Michael felt from Hunter, he knew the latter was stronger than him. However, Michael didn't compare himself with Hunter. Time flew differently in each universe. The Hunter before him might have spent more time in his world, getting stronger than him. With enough time, Michael had no doubt he would become the strongest being in the universe. To do that, he needed to push away his current enemies. Just don't die, Hunter grinned. Soon, a golden light coiled around Hunter's wrist, forming the silhouettes of fire-breathing dragons. Boom! In a blink of an eye, Michael felt like he had been hit by a train. Before the brain could process everything and let him feel the pain, his body went crashing into the Holy Church's roof. Hunter looked at the tower, crumbling down, shaking his fist. His fist went numb after hitting Ghost. It was like he hit a metal wall. Hunter wondered what kind of cultivation Ghost was doing to be that strong. Ding! 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 The holy guards who saw the tower collapsing quickly rang the bell to alert everyone. As a result, the soldiers adorned in white radiant armor rushed out of the church. They all shot to the sky from the ground like arrows to fight Hunter, who was in the Dark Lord's armor. The moment the holy guards saw Hunter, Their eyes went wide behind their helmets. It wouldn't be an understatement to tell they trembled at the sight of the Dark Lord. In just a few moments, 50 holy guards surrounded Hunter. "This is fun," Hunter chuckled. "Abomination." This chapter upload first at Novelbin. Net if you want to read more chapters, please visit novelnext.com to experience faster update speed. Unholy evil. We will bring you to justice. Hunter furrowed his crease as he had never heard such cliché lines before. He wasn't hiding his energy radiation, but still, the soldiers remained without budging. The reality was the soldiers simply couldn't see Hunter's energy radiation as Michael did. Moreover, Hunter was oblivious to the fact that the Hydra's shout has robbed the cultivators of their ability to see others' cultivation levels. Hunter threw a glance at the reluctant soldiers before looking at the sky above him from the corner of his eye. He sensed sudden energy appearing above him. "Interesting," said Hunter. Ghost had informed Hunter about this. He briefly explained how someone or something might appear to spy on them. To his surprise, Ghost said he wanted them to see the battle. As per Ghost's request, Hunter didn't destroy the spy even though he could have done it with a simple flick of his wrist. When Hunter returned his gaze back to the holy guards, a guard slowly moved forward with his spear pointing at Hunter. Despite being surrounded by countless soldiers, Hunter remained calm. It was a pity that the system went offline. Otherwise, Hunter would have received quite a sum of experience and badass points. Hunter calmly raised his hand, drawing a skull in the air. The skull glimmered with bright white light. "Phoo!" Hunter sent a blow of wind to the skull as it began to grow from palm-sized to a skull 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide. The skull suddenly came to life, opening its jaw. Seeing the terrifying white skull, the soldier's body went rigid. "Arg!" The soldier screamed as he tried to stab the skull. However, the spear went through the skull. Before the soldier could pull the spear back, the skull swallowed the soldier. As soon as the skull touched the soldier, the poor one instantly turned into a puff of smoke. Even the armor wasn't spared by the skull. That was only a low-level spell. Hunter was surprised to see how weak the soldier was. Though the reality was the soldier wasn't weak, Hunter was too strong. The power gap between Hunter and the soldier to that of the earth to the sky. After all, in this world's cultivation stage, Hunter was at the celestial stage while the soldier was only at the soul refining stage. Even if hundreds of soldiers attacked Hunter at the same time, they still wouldn't be able to harm Hunter, not even a bit. Following their fellow soldiers' sudden death, the rest trembled. The soldiers swallowed their shock and tried to attack Hunter again. They wanted to kill Hunter before he could cast another spell. Attacking Hunter before casting another spell would have worked if Hunter wasn't too damn stronger than them. Simply put, Hunter didn't even need to cast spells. Instead, he could just crush them with sheer physical strength alone. Hunter tilted his head with an amused smile on his face.